good morning to you on this new day. It's the 10th of July. It's a Thursday, or we call it Friday Eve sometimes. And you are tuned in to Rise and Shine here on Channel Africa, coming to you live from Johannesburg. That's where our studios are in South Africa. We are on DSTV 802 Audio Bouquet, on OpenView 6 to 8, on www.channelafrica.co.za, on SABC Plus, and of course live streaming throughout our various social media platforms at Channel Africa 1 is our handle. My name is Asanda, Beda.
And I'm Peter Ndoro. Very good morning to you. Thanks so much indeed for tuning in. What are we looking at on the program this hour? Well, fresh violence in South Sudan has forced millions to flee to Ethiopia. And also, Namibia hosts Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. We'll have more on these stories and others after the news, as we say good morning to Joalane Tulongwepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Tunisian opposition leader Rachid Ghannouchi has been sentenced to 14 years in prison, adding in a string of other jail terms he has received in separate cases. Ghannouchi, who heads the moderate Islamist Ennahda party, was among 18 politicians and officials sentenced yesterday for conspiracy, or rather on Tuesday, for conspiring against state security. Ghannouchi's defense team denied the charges brought against the 84-year-old, saying the proceedings did not meet the standards of a fair trial. Ghannouchi has been in jail since 2023 and refused to attend Tuesday's sentencing remotely. Opposition political parties in Cameroon meeting in the capital Yaoundé have failed to produce a single candidate to face 92-year-old Paul Biya in the Central African state's October presidential elections. Civil society groups and analysts say if the country's fragmented opposition fails to unite to face Biya, the incumbent, who is the world's oldest leader, will win the elections, extending his 4-decade-long rule. Edward Nfor, a member of the Cameroon Civil Society Group, says Cameroon's opposition must be united and stop competing in dispersed ranks.
Opposition parties in Cameroon are playing with the emotions of millions of Cameroonians who want change from October, who want change this year. I don't know if our opposition leaders know what Cameroonians want. Everyone is coming and announcing his or her candidacy, and the consequences of this can be very, very disastrous. I see this as greed, total greed on the part of our opposition leaders. Everyone wants to have the power, all the power for himself. It is greed. The consequences can be very disastrous if the opposition doesn't take power in October.
Kenya's President William Ruto has said anyone taking part in looting and arson during considered a declaration of war on Kenya. Speaking during a visit to a construction site, he warned against attempts to overthrow the government.
I saw them saying that they won't wait for the elections in 2027. They want to plan chaos, protests, burn people's property, cause death in Kenya so that they can overthrow the Kenyan government before 2027. I dare them to try.
South Africa's Defence and Military Veterans Minister, Angie Motshekga, has assured the nation that all the 2,250 South African National Defence Force members who were deployed in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo have since returned home. 14 SANDF soldiers were killed earlier this year after M23 rebels advanced on the city of Goma in the DRC. Motshekga says all that's remaining at this stage is the Army's equipment that is currently being kept in Tanzania.
Meanwhile, all our prime mission equipment has also been withdrawn from the Eastern DRC. It's currently in Tanzania. It's being verified, will be loaded back by air and sea, and will be back home. I also want to take this opportunity to thank the government of Rwanda for allowing us a safe passage through their territory into Tanzania, and further wish to thank the governments of Tanzania, Malawi, and the parties involved in the safe withdrawal of our members.
Europe's top human rights court has found Russia responsible for the downing of Malaysian Airlines flight over Ukraine in 2014. Flight MH17 was travelling from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur when it was shot down, killing nearly 300 people. The court found Russia was also responsible for the suffering of victims' families by denying involvement in the disaster and obstructing investigations. For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Cholani Tulo Wempe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In our sports headline, in a coaching shake-up, Nigeria Football Federation has handed the reins of the home-based Super Eagles to Eric Sekou Chelle. And Belgium's Remco Evenepoel has the yellow jersey inside as the leading contenders for the Tour de France. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
6 minutes past 6 Central African Time. Every day after the news on Africa Rise and Shine, we give you some stories you may have missed from the previous day. Maybe you want a different angle in terms of a wrap-up of what's happening in and around our continent. And I guess it's also a throw forward to what you can expect to develop within the news space in this new day. Today we start in South Sudan, where some 50,000 people from South Sudan are estimated to be seeking relief in Ethiopia as fresh violence breaks out in Upper Nile State. The World Food Programme is calling for urgent action to help displaced families in desperate need of aid. Sean Hogan reports.
Exhausted, pregnant and hungry, Nyandao Wei Ding and her family wait for food at this aid station in the remote border town of Muon in Ethiopia's Gambia region. They have abandoned everything back home in South Sudan as they flee violence in the Upper Nile state. The head of this WFP field office, Kudzai Mazumba, says they plan to provide monthly food rations but need more resources.
The situation urgently calls for the international community to commit additional resources that will enable a multi-sectoral response so that the needs of these people who are in a dire situation are met and addressed.
India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has arrived in Namibia for the final leg of his five-nation tour, becoming the first Indian Prime Minister to visit the country in almost 30 years. The visit focuses on deepening bilateral relations and expanding cooperation across various sectors. Namibian President Dr. Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah warmly welcomed Modi in the capital, Windhoek.
This historical state visit, in particular significant as it marks the 35 years since the establishment of diplomatic relations between our two countries, and yet another manifestation of unwavering bonds of friendship and solidarity. To me personally, it's very historic in the sense that since I took over as President of the Republic of Namibia, this is the first state visit I'm hosting, and I don't take it very lightly.
Protesters braving police batons, water cannons and sporadic gunfire in Kenya this week have rallied around the slogan Ruto One Term, demanding President William Ruto serve only one term amid growing economic and political frustrations.
With the faint drumbeat of a 2027 election growing louder, analysts say Ruto needs to win over a younger, better educated population. But many of that generation are disillusioned.
Today is a day for us youths, revolution. We are fighting for the rights of the fellow youths.
So-called Gen Z protesters are the product of free schooling introduced 2 decades ago. With up to 800,000 young people entering the job market each year, Gen Z are more educated than their elders, but are also more likely to be unemployed.
So help me God.
As for Ruto, he came to power 3 years ago, promising to boost jobs, protect the poor, and end police brutality. But more than halfway through his term, he faces mounting anger over high living costs, corruption, and police brutality.
Ghana's President John Mahama has launched his country's first national task force to tackle gold smuggling, aiming to recover billions lost to illegal trade. Previous attempts to regulate mining had little success.
The task force is not just a security initiative, it is a strategic arm of national economic transformation.
President John Dramani Mahama announced a security-backed task force targeting illegal gold trading across the country. The West African nation, Africa's top gold producer, is looking to recover billions of dollars lost to smuggling. Earlier this year, the country created a new government body called Gold Board to centralize all gold trading. Mahama says this has led to record official exports in the first 5 months of 2025, valued at $5 billion. Ghana also plans to roll out a nationwide gold traceability system and transition to refined gold exports by 2026.
That's how we come to the end of today's Africa Roundup. We'll do this again tomorrow on Friday after the news. This is Africa Rise and Shine. Stay with us.
Download the SABC app and take Channel Africa with you everywhere you go.
Zilipendwa na Abedi Jean de la Croix. Anaitwa Daniel Etienne Benson. Huyu alizaliwa mwaka 1997, ilikuwa Mei 14, na anajulikana kitaalamu kabisa kwa jina la muziki BNXN. Haya, ni mwanamuziki huyo, ni mwimbaji kutoka nchini Nigeria, mtunzi wa nyimbo na mtayarishaji wa record label. Ameshirikiana na Rema kwenye wimbo huu. Rema vile vile ni msanii kutoka huko nchini Nigeria. Zilipendwa kila Jumamosi kuanzia saa 12 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati hadi saa 1 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
As South Africa prepares to mark Nelson Mandela Day on the 18th of July, the Telkom Foundation has officially announced its return as a key partner of the Nelson Mandela Foundation. The joint announcement was made at the Nelson Mandela Center of Memory in Johannesburg. Our reporter Lebogang Mabange attended the event and filed this report.
With Nelson Mandela Day just days away, the Center of Memory in Gauteng was a fitting venue for the relaunch of a powerful alliance, one that promises to preserve Madiba's legacy in both physical and digital form. The Nelson Mandela Foundation and Telkom Foundation have renewed their partnership, focusing on legacy preservation, youth education, and digital transformation. Dr. Mbongiseni Buthelezi, CEO of the Nelson Mandela Foundation, said the partnership is about both safeguarding the past and building a just future.
The foundation holds a very important legacy that needs to be preserved and made available to the world. And Madiba's legacy, we rely on support from other organizations to make that legacy available to the world. And Telkom is one of the best partners that we could work with, because they are also about leaving no one behind and also about making connections possible. So it's important for us in that regard. But the second thing is that it is important, I think, for us to have a South African partner.
He explained why partnering with a local organization like Telkom is essential to honoring Madiba's African roots.
It's easy for a legacy like Madiba, which is huge internationally, to excite people in other parts of the world. But as they say, there are no free lunches. So if we were to get funding from a similar organization from another country, we would be then expected to do things perhaps that are not quite what we want to do with Madiba's legacy as a South African legacy, but also as an African legacy. And so it's important to have a partner like Telkom that is South African for us to be able to do work that is meaningful for South Africa and for Africa.
The foundation runs literacy and leadership programs that bring schools and communities into the memory space and believes Telkom support will amplify this outreach.
The work of the foundation is really about the making of just societies and the making of a just South African society. And that is about dealing with poverty and inequality, dealing with the ways in which we see public systems fading. And that's what we advocate about, and that's the benefit to all of society that we aim to bring. And so a partnership with Telkom and other partners, of course, is about enhancing that work, continuing that work, bringing Madiba's legacy to the world.
For the Telkom Foundation, the renewed collaboration reinforces their commitment to empowering young people through both history and technology. Mpho McNamee, Telkom's Group Chief of Corporate Affairs, said it's a reconnection built on shared values.
There's a beautiful relationship between Telkom and the Nelson Mandela Foundation, which dates back to when Tata Madiba was still alive. And to renew this partnership means so much for us in the sense that we are driven by similar values, and we also have a similar vision in terms of ensuring that we can educate future generations to ensure that they are empowered by understanding history as well as knowing how to move forward into the future, which is where Telkom comes in terms of empowering people with digital skills.
She notes that while physical archives remain vital, Telkom is already supporting preservation in practical ways, including infrastructure improvements.
It was quite an exciting opportunity when we received the call from the foundation saying that they were struggling to preserve national treasury for the country. To ensure that we could have important artifacts that would remain available into the future. And so the air conditioning, whilst you may think, okay, it's just air conditioning, is much larger than that. It's actually an effort to preserve history and also to ensure that there's continued learning in this space.
Looking ahead, both organizations are working on ways to make archives digitally accessible while using Madiba's legacy to inspire the next generation of leaders and, as Buthelezi puts it, even the next generation of troublemakers. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebogang Mabange in Johannesburg, South Africa.
A breakthrough in the fight against malaria. The first treatment specifically designed for babies and very young children has been approved and is set to be rolled out across several African countries in the coming weeks. Until now, no malaria drug had been approved for this vulnerable age group. According to the World Health Organization, children under the age of 5 account for around 76% of all malaria deaths in Africa in 2023. Channel Africa's Sisi Sekhalo spoke to Dr. Dorothy Achu, who's the team lead for tropical and vector-borne diseases at the WHO Regional Office for Africa, about this crucial development.
The malaria treatment we are talking about is not a new one. It's very common artemisinin combination therapy, which we call artemether-lumefantrine. It's been used for several years in older age children and even in adults. This time around, initially was restricted for children that weigh below 5 kilos because of unexpected side effects that they could have in these babies. They're very, very young babies. But now they've developed, after some studies, the right dosage for babies below 5 kilos, weighing below 5 kilos. So artemether-lumefantrine is the drug we are talking about. It's a dispersible tablet, which even older children take, but this has been adapted for babies.
And how dangerous is malaria in babies and children?
Well, malaria is one of the first killers, especially in the African region and in other high burden countries, even in Southeast Asia. This malaria
is something that kills children within days. It develops very fast. It causes high fevers, severe anemia, convulsions, and children can get into a coma and die very, 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 very quickly. So you know that we registered estimated about 600,000 deaths of malaria, and above 76% of these numbers of deaths are in children. So children are the people who die most, children under 5. But babies have a lesser risk, especially babies that are well breastfed in these areas, because they have a level of immunity. So we expect them to be less of a risk to malaria if they are well breastfed, because they have immunity from their mothers. But once they are weaned from breastfeeding, then they are quite exposed, and this is usually after the age of 6 months or sometimes 1 year. All right, Dr. Dorothy, how was the situation like before with regards to malaria in small babies or in small children, and how were they treated? Yeah, so in babies, as I mentioned, wasn't a very, very common phenomena, but now that you ask children when they develop malaria and it was confirmed what was administered, they usually administered other ACTs, which are artemisinin combination therapies. We have other ones that are on the market, but most of them rapidly develop severe symptoms and will be put on injectable treatments, either drips, quinine drips, or injectable lactate unit. So these will have been used for this age group, as well as other ACTs. Although the one that the artemether lumenfantrine is the one that has really been tested and proven to be safe in this age group. We also understand that it will be rolled out in African countries in several weeks. Do these countries have the money for the drug? The cost, it's relatively a little higher at production, but there are mechanisms to ensure that they get to countries at a very affordable rate. Again, I told you that there were other this drug was already on the market for older children who weigh above 5 kilos. And so we're going to match the prices to be a little comparable to this. So since governments were already accessing this other formulations for older children through different mechanisms and buying them, we expect that it should remain affordable for the younger babies.
South Africa is in the process of putting in place a framework to help implement its policy on waste disposal. While progress has been made, there are teething challenges that may require amendments to make it easy for producer responsibility organizations to comply with policies. This is according to the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment in South Africa, which took part in a one-day conference to find waste solutions ahead of the country's developmental goals in 2030. Timakadzo Lishoro filed this report.
The one-day conference as part of the IFED Africa conference currently taking place in Johannesburg, South Africa, brought together individuals involved in climate-related activities to talk about how to effectively dispose of waste to the benefit of the environment. Principal scientist at the Center for Scientific and Industrial Research in South Africa, Professor Linda Godfrey, says it will be difficult for the country to reach its national developmental goals by 2030 when it doesn't know what resources it has or needs.
Has South Africa ever determined what resources we need to achieve the NDP 2030? And no one's been able to answer that question. So how do we know as a country that we have the resources we need to achieve our development pathway? We know the impact of energy insecurity on our economy over the last 2 decades. We've seen the impact of water scarcity with the droughts down in the Western Cape and the Eastern Cape. What happens, as we are starting to face now, and we'll see on the next slide, when we start to experience materials insecurity as well. The race is on globally for access to critical minerals. And I think as a continent, as a country, we need to understand this and we need to look at how we position ourselves within that narrative. And the role that value retention provides in keeping resources flowing in our economy, but also continues to unlock socio-economic opportunities.
The Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment says it came up with a legal framework and a panel of experts to implement the Extended Producer Responsibility Program formulated in 2022. South Africa is the only country on the continent that has an Extended Producer Responsibility Framework, and it has been navigating challenges including onerous requirements for producer responsibility organizations. Gauta Mokoena is the Chief Director for Chemicals and Waste Management at the department.
We are looking at how we can improve on it. As definitely directed, we are one of the few African countries where we are still, but the guideline wanted to help us in standardizing how we implement the fees part, but we have come to realize that there is fees by producers or fees by PROs. So hence, in the amendments in the regulations, we try to align that experience from the guideline as well as the reality that there will be producer scheme or producer responsible organizations scheme. And similarly, we can come back to the guideline as well to say, is it assisting us to achieve the objective we wanted it to assist in addressing. The other speaker talked to the issue of the free riders, but also one other reason is that there is that market online. Shopping is happening, and it would be unfair for us to place the responsibility on the local producer for products that are coming elsewhere. So it's a process in the thorough evaluation of the fees. We are trying to align as well with how much has each producer put on the market or in an EPR scheme run by PRO.
Mokoena added that free riders who don't comply with legislation but benefit from efforts put in by compliant players is a big challenge for lawmakers. But Jean Klink, a managing director at PV Salco in Belgium, provided ideas on how to handle free riders, including legally prosecuting them.
Option one, you can put a visible fee, as I said, with Belgium and France, almost planet perfect. Option two is you can establish maybe professional cooperation. I call it professional. I was thinking yesterday on another word where I said professional cooperation between waste administration, the inspection of EPR, and the PROs. And I know if this exists, but we have only one example in Europe. Unfortunately, again, a Belgian one. Just sorry, apologize, but it's in Flanders, where the Flemish Waste Administration, called OVA, has even a team inspection external producer responsibility. Can you imagine? Good intervention, good cooperation between inspection authorities and PROs, whereby, okay, we do the first round, but if you are really stubborn, then they have the authority, even with administrative and criminal prosecution possible.
For Channel Africa News in Johannesburg, I'm Dima Gatsole-Shoro.
So, going back in time, history, one wouldn't have thought, but Napoleon Bonaparte once had his footprints on our continent at the Battle of Aboukir in 1799. That's 10 years after the French Revolution. Napoleon's French forces defeated the Ottoman army at Aboukir in northern Egypt, and this victory temporarily secured French control in Egypt, although British forces would eventually force their withdrawal. I didn't know that, to be honest. And then also another important event that took place the 24th of July 1990 at a conference in Arusha in Tanzania. African leaders and civil society organizations adopted the African Charter for Popular Participation in Development and Transformation, emphasizing grassroots involvement in Africa's process. So, again, all of these Pan-African ideals coming together and then we kind of look to see over time what have they done. So we have lots of great ideas, always have great ideas, but not always the follow-through, sadly, yeah. So, it's 6:30. What does that mean, Asanda?
Get our news headlines, and good morning to you, Jolani Tulongwepe.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. The Democratic Alliance Party in South Africa will today lay criminal charges against Police Minister Senzo Mchunu at the Cape Town Central Police Station in the Western Cape Province. This is in light of explosive allegations by KZN Police Commissioner Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi that Mchunu has ties with criminal syndicates. US President Donald Trump is hosting leaders of 5 West African nations at the White House. This includes the presidents of Gabon, Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, Mauritania and Senegal. The meeting will focus on deepening economic partnerships, including private sector investment and possibly enhanced security cooperation. And finally, Tunisian opposition leader Rachid Ghannouchi has been sentenced to 14 years in prison, adding to a string of other jail terms he has received in separate cases. I will have details on these and other stories at 7 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Right, let's find out what's been happening in the world of sport overnight as we say good morning to Figile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Good morning, guys. We begin with football news. It's coming to the business end of it at the weekend. Fabian Ruiz scored twice as European champions Paris Saint-Germain turned on the style in their reunion with Kylian Mbappe, thrashing Real Madrid 4-0 in the semi-finals of the Club World Cup to set up a final showdown with Chelsea. Ruiz and Ousmane Dembele scored inside the opening 9 minutes to stun Real and silence the majority of the 77,000 crowd who were wearing white at the MetLife Stadium outside New York. The Spanish midfielder added another before halftime, and Gonzalo Ramos got a late fourth as Luis Enrique's side moved one game away from glory at FIFA's new tournament. Victory against Chelsea on Sunday would complete a campaign of unparalleled success for the Parisians, who won the French title and then the first UEFA Champions League in their history in May. In a coaching shake-up, just a month before the 2025 Total Energies African Nations Championship CHAN, the Nigeria Football Federation has handed the reins of the home-based Super Eagles to Eric Sekou Chelle. Chelle's appointment comes after former handler Daniel Ogumondede guided the team through a qualification for the tournament, which will be hosted in August across Kenya, Uganda and Tanzania. The Malian-born Chelle, who is the coach of Nigeria's senior national team, the Super Eagles, has now been handed the additional task of coaching the national team for home-based players. The South African national team is stepping up their preparations for the FIFA Under-17 Men's World Cup with a participation in the COSAFA organized Region 5 games in Namibia. The Vela Kumalo-led Amajimbo side is participating in an Under-20 tournament with the Under-17 team testing the strength of their squad ahead of the World Cup tournament in Qatar, scheduled for November. After producing a 6-goal thriller in the 3-all draw against Zambia, Amajimbo's hammered Botswana 3-0 in the second game. Assistant coach Thabo Mngomeni says they're getting the much-needed test in this tournament.
Since you have mentioned that, of course, we are preparing for the World Cup. This is a good preparation for us. Teams like these, they give us tough time so that we can think what we can get on the World Cup stages. I think I can say we are thankful of this opportunity that we got here to prepare for the World Cup.
Having played against Zambia, another World Cup bound team, Ngomeni, a former Bafana Bafana international, says this is the kind of opposition they needed for their preparations.
Definitely, because the teams that we are playing here, they are not just the walkovers. We have to think, we have to plan. It's not an easy game. So definitely it is.
And finally, with cycling, Belgium's Remco Evenepoel has the yellow jersey in his sights as the leading contenders for the Tour de France are set to face their first major test of this year's race with a time trial around the Caen in the 5th stage. The first of the 2 time trials will feature 200 meters of climbing over the 33-kilometer stage in the Normandy countryside. Evenepoel, a 2-time trial world champion, is the overwhelming favorite for the stage, especially after Italy's Filippo Ganna and Switzerland's Stefano Bissinger withdrew on Saturday. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Figile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Africa, meet Abedi.
Yeah, that's me.
Abedi is a music lover through and through.
I really love African music.
He's got a taste for all kinds of tunes and spends his days listening to Channel Africa. Guess what? He didn't know.
Okay.
Channel Africa wants to help Abedi and all music lovers everywhere to discover even more incredible music. That is why Channel Africa is calling on all African musicians to submit their music. Musicians, remember to give us all your relevant information. Make your submissions at music@channelafrica.co.za. Submissions are your chance to be heard on radio. But sadly, they do not guarantee that you will be playlisted. All submissions will be carefully reviewed to see if they meet our station's requirement. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa.
Coming up on Rise and Shine, we'll give you our G20 fact and also looking at the US President Donald Trump, who's intensifying his opposition to the BRICS groups of rapidly growing economies, those Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. But right now, let's get our economics update. Here's Tabiso Lehuku with the business news.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and good morning. Lesotho has declared a national state of disaster due to an economic crisis fueled by mass unemployment. Government ministries have been ordered to allocate 2% of their budgets to job creation programs. The Prime Minister, Sam Matekane, says youth unemployment has been made worse by cuts to foreign aid and US tariffs. Morocco plans to build a 500-megawatt state-owned data center powered by renewable energy to strengthen the security of data storage. The country's digital minister, Amal Al-Fala Segrochini, says that the center will be located in Dakhla in Western Sahara. Chandugo Legege has the details.
Several countries are building state-owned data centers to ensure that sensitive data can be stored and processed within national borders. Morocco launched its first sovereign center in January. It has been offering cloud hosting services to local public and private organizations. Minister Segrochni says through this network of data centers, the kingdom not only asserts its digital sovereignty but also its ambition to become a regional digital hub serving Africa. Morocco plans to invest $1.22 billion on its digital modernization strategy, which includes artificial intelligence and expanding fiber optic deployment.
The South African Communications Minister, Solly Malatsi, has officially taken on the role of chairman at this year's World Summit on the Information Society in Switzerland. Malatsi says he aims to foster the development of an inclusive digital society worldwide. This as South Africa accelerates efforts to build its own digital economy, create homegrown tech innovation and position itself as a key player on the world stage. Malatsi has addressed the delegates at the summit currently underway in Geneva.
It is indeed an immense honor for me and my country to take over the chairmanship of WSIS Plus 20 high-level event. WSIS has played a foundational role in shaping the global information society and remains more relevant than ever. We must ask ourselves and answer honestly, where have we succeeded and where must we do better? Most importantly, how must we adapt our frameworks in the face of emerging technologies that are transforming the very fabric of our societies? How do we respond to the deepening global inequalities and interconnected challenges?
South Africa's Health Minister, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, says combined efforts by international donors and Treasury will ensure that the country's HIV and AIDS program can continue. Motsoaledi presented his department's $17 billion budget vote in the National Assembly. Earlier this year, the United States President's emergency plan for AIDS relief, or PEPFAR, was withdrawn. It left a funding gap of $449,000. Motsoaledi says that the department has sought assistance from local and international donors to ensure that the HIV/AIDS program will not collapse.
Treasury has allocated 553,528,000 for us to start the process of reversing the going away of Trump. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation have given us an offer. They said each one of them can pay 100 million rand for research, provided that our Treasury must add 200 for every 100 they've given. Treasury is going to add 400 million rand.
Emirates Global Aluminium says that the Ghanaian government had wrongfully terminated an agreement with its subsidiary Guinea Aluminium Corporation after a year-long dispute over the construction of an alumina refinery. Guinea's military government suspended the corporation's bauxite exports and mining operations as part of the West Africa's military-led state's increasingly aggressive push to extract greater benefits from their vast natural resources. The junta, which seized power in 2021 in the world's second largest producer of bauxite, the primary ore used to produce aluminium, had demanded that miners present plans to build refineries in order to generate capital for the country. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 530. Botswana 13.21. Kenya 128 shilling 594, and Zambia 24 kwacha 30. The BRICS countries, I'll start in China. The dollar there will cost you 7 yuan 17. In Russia, 78 rubles 23. India, 85 rupees 72. Brazil, 5 real 47. And in South Africa, the dollar is trading at 17 rand 79 cents. $1 is trading at 73 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold $3,322 and platinum $1,344 per ounce. Brent crude oil $70.14 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Thabiso Lohoko.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa.
Now, as part of its G20 presidency, South Africa has proposed setting up a cost of capital commission. The aim, well, to conduct a thorough expert review of the factors driving up the cost of capital in developing economies. Now, the findings could play a key role in helping countries manage debt sustainably and create more fiscal room for development. And that is our G20 fact for the day.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability.
The South African Broadcasting Corporation, SABC Sport, brings you Chasing the Sun, a powerful 5-part documentary series about the country's national rugby team, the Springboks, telling the rousing tale of their path to redemption and ultimate World Cup glory in 2019. Starting 13 July at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC2, tune in every Sunday for the highs, the heartache, and the heroes that made rugby history. Stream each chapter on SABC Plus anytime, anywhere, no subscription needed. Don't miss Chasing the Sun this Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC2. Be there when history shines.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
SA cane growers representing over 20,000 small-scale farmers and 1,200 large-scale growers in South Africa say it is deeply concerned about the 30% tariff on South African sugar exports to the United States, which is set to take effect on August 1st. They say the move could render the country's sugar uncompetitive in the U.S. In addition, it underscores the urgent need to protect the local industry from the ongoing threat of unfairly priced imports. Channel Africa reporter Sisi Sekgalo spoke to the Chief Executive Officer of SA Cane Growers, Dr. Thomas Funke, about this issue.
The increase in the tariff to the U.S. will have an impact on the South African sugar industry. We send 24,000 tons of sugar to the U.S. every year. And in the past, this was done at a zero import duty due to the quota. The 30% tariff on the sugar will make us uncompetitive in that market, and that will mean we will have to drop our price in order to compete with other countries that have not received a similar import duty.
We understand, Dr. Funke, that South African sugarcane growers are already under pressure from the cheap subsidized imports from the global competitors. How does this impact you?
That's correct. So we are already under pressure. We're seeing currently an influx of sugar from Brazil, India, Thailand into the South African market. And that means that for every ton that's imported from these countries, we will have to export the equivalent at a loss. So it's very bad for us at this stage. We're hoping that we can work together with government to try and protect the local market and the jobs that the sugar industry provides.
In your statement, you spoke a lot about the challenges that you are facing as an industry. Can you take us through those challenges and how they impact you?
Yeah, there are many challenges I think that every industry faces. The sugar industry in South Africa faces challenges along the lines of weather conditions. In the past, we had flooding in KZN, which was really bad. We had the unrest, then we've got the sugar tax, which is obviously also affecting sales and impacting on our revenue. Fertilizer prices, diesel prices were very bad and very high. Luckily, they have come down slightly. And then we've got now this impact of the imports coming into the country, which is displacing South African sugar into our local market. And in addition, we've got a huge tax or tariff for our exports that go to the U.S. market. So all around, it's been a very challenging time. And I think the challenges are just coming in thick and fast.
And this 30% tariff, how is it going to compound on the challenges that you already have?
Yeah, unfortunately for us, it will mean that we'll have a 30% reduction in revenue from our exports to the U.S. market. In the past, the market was, or this trade with the U.S. was very lucrative and really assisted us in maintaining our revenue base. So that is really unfortunate, and we'll have to see if we can do exports still into the U.S. or if we'll have to find other markets to export to. Unfortunately, no market will offer the same value as the U.S. market has offered in the past.
And have you engaged the government about the challenges that you've had in the industry, and what is their response?
We have definitely engaged with government. Under Minister Patel, we had our master plan for the sugar industry, which we believe was very successful. And we are hoping that with Minister Tao, the new Minister of the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, we can continue on a second phase of the master plan up to 2030. And hopefully that will be a platform where we can deal with a lot of these issues.
That was Channel Africa reporter Sisi Sekhalo, who spoke to the Chief Executive Officer of the SA Cane Growers, that's the South African Cane Growers Association, Dr. Thomas Funke.
And still in South Africa, the country's top police official has confirmed that a senior provincial police commissioner is under threat after making explosive corruption allegations against high-ranking officials, including the National Police Minister. Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, who leads the police force in KwaZulu-Natal province, claims that some top officials have ties to organized crime and have interfered with police operations. His personal security has since been increased. Nhlanhla Mahlangu has more for us.
KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Police Commissioner Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi has dominated public discourse in South Africa after he made damning allegations against Police Minister Senzo Mchunu, Deputy National Police Commissioner Lieutenant General Shadrack Sibiya, and other high-placed authorities in South Africa on Sunday. Masemola addressed journalists virtually on Wednesday from a facility in Vanderbay Park, Gauteng, where he revealed that the security system around the provincial commissioner has been upgraded. Masemola says Mkhwanazi needs protection.
In terms of physical protection, you know that, as I said, he's been getting threats to his life in that province. We have beefed up his security. But he won't be persecuted. From my side, surely there will be no persecution of any member of South African Police Service. Not only him, but anyone.
KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi alleged at the weekend that senior police officials were involved in corruption and interfered in crime-fighting operations. He accused the police ministry of interference in police operations and detailed how the minister and his associate Brown Mokhotsi had been entangled with the South African police service provider businessman Vusimuzi Ket Matlala, who had been awarded a multi-million-dollar tender with the law enforcement agency in 2024. Matlala is an alleged criminal mastermind and tender king, while Mokhotsi is alleged to be politically connected. A statement released by Mchunu's ministry denied that the minister ever met controversial Matlala. More from Police Ministry spokesperson Kamogelo Mokhotsi.
The minister has never met Mr. Matlala, has never spoken to him, nor has the minister ever requested or received anything from him. The minister did, however, initiate a review of the SAPS tender awarded to him when suspicions of possible wrongdoing surfaced. It was the same tender which has since been terminated. Furthermore, whilst the minister knows and has met Mr. Brown Mokhotsi, he is just a comrade and not an associate of the minister. The minister has never requested or received anything from him.
Mkhwanazi has said he will be opening a case against Mchunu for alleged interference in policing matters. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Nhlanhla Mahlangu in Johannesburg.
Murder-accused and controversial South African businessman Vusimuzi Ket Matlala is once again under the spotlight. This after he was found with a cell phone in prison. On Sunday, South Africa's KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi alleged Matlala has links to the country's police minister Senzo Mchunu. Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi accused the minister of aiding corruption and derailing an investigation into political killings in the province. But who is Ket Matlala and what is the controversy around him? Neria Mahlokotsa filed this report.
Vusimuzi Matlala is no ordinary businessman. For years, he's been living a lavish lifestyle, mainly through state procurement. He came on the radar when murdered whistleblower Babita Deokaran flagged his shell companies for possible fraudulent activities at the Tembisa hospital worth millions. Defend Our Democracy Executive Director Naledi Khwadi says they have been calling for the kingpins behind the corruption at Tembisa Hospital to face the music.
Those tenders still being given out in the manner that they're given out speak to deep-rooted corruption. Because when you follow due process and you investigate who the individual is, you find the number of investigations that speak to the individual in question. You find that there are allegations that have been made that are damning, that would require, at the very least, a municipality or a state institution to distance themselves from it. So why was he given tenders?
His company, Medicare 24 Tshwane District, bagged a 360 million rand tender from police in June last year. The 3-year health risk management deal has since been cancelled by the National Police Commissioner. News 24 investigative journalist Jeff Wiggs explains how the tender process was flawed from the start.
Through a minnow company with no track record in the occupational health industry, which had only existed for 5 years and was actually run out of a Boksburg strip mall, had won this 360 million rand police tender. And that was huge. Because for us, we knew that Vusimuzi Matlala was an active subject of both an SIU investigation and a corruption probe by the Hawks.
Matlala's security company, Cat VIP Protection Services, has also not been without scandals. The Police Portfolio Committee also confirmed that guns allegedly belonging to the company were unlawfully stored at the home of KwaZulu-Natal businesswoman and Royal AM Football Club owner Sean Mkhize. The committee's chairperson is Ian Cameron.
A few months ago, SARS conducted a raid at Mkhize, Miss Mkhize's home, the owner of a well-known soccer club. During that raid, a whole cache of firearms were seized. All of those firearms were registered to a security company belonging to none other than Mr. Kat Mutlala. Now, after questioning Sira about how on earth they continued to allow accreditation, the answer was that they couldn't find a transgression. Now, if it were you or I that kept firearms illegally at a property where they're not registered to be kept and that's not fit and proper for keeping those firearms, we would not only face criminal procedures, but we would obviously have our firearms seized. Well, all of the firearms were returned to the said security company.
Matlala is awaiting trial at the Kgosi Mampuru prison for allegedly planning a hit on his former lover. Even still, his troubles follow him after a mobile phone was found in his possession. Spokesperson for civil organization Action Society, Juanita Dupree, believes the disgraced entrepreneur is not working alone.
Let's get him out of the system, but I'm sure it might seem like he's a one-man show, but if we don't fix the problems of the corruption in the police, in the top ranks, another person is just going to fill his place. I'm sure he's not a one-man show. He might have all the profit at the moment and be the face of it, but I'm sure the next person is standing in the flanks.
KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner believes Matlala and fellow businessman Brown Mogotsi were influential in the political killing task team being disbanded. According to Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, Matlala's name comes up in investigations on the moving of contraband and illegal weapons across the country. Special Crimes investigator Mike Bolhase has described Matlala as dangerous.
Vusi is an extremely dangerous man and also a very important man for those who are involved with organized crime, especially for those in government who are involved and senior police officials. He is a strong arm for those, and he will commit the dirty works. And he is operating, funding, and in cahoots with Boko Haram, and I would say those in the taxi industry as well, the hitmen and the gangsters there.
Those who have been watching and monitoring Matlala's moves agree that he has indeed been getting away with a lot of transgressions. I am Nerea Hlakutsa in Johannesburg.
right, we enter now the next hour of Africa Rise and Shine, 7 o'clock Central African time it is, and we say good morning to you. If you've just joined us, thank you for doing just that. In this hour, we look at opposition political parties in Cameroon meeting in the capital Yaoundé and how that has failed to produce a single candidate to face 92-year-old Paul Biya in the Central African States October presidential elections. Also looking at what's happening in Uganda, where jailed politician Kizza Besigye has launched a political party. All those stories and more coming up. I'm Asanda Beda.
And I'm Peter Ndoro. Thanks for tuning in. And remember, you're streaming live on www.channelafrica.co.za. And you can also catch us on our mobile app, SABC Plus. That's SABC Plus. Very good morning to you once again. Joelani Tulo Mwepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Kenya's President William Ruto has warned against attempts to overthrow the government. Ruto's comments come as tensions remain high in the country amid anti-government protests. Kenya's Human Rights Commission says 31 people died and more than 100 were injured during Monday's clashes. Speaking during a visit to a construction site, Ruto said anyone taking part in looting and arson during anti-government protests in the country should be shot in the leg. Ruto said attacks on police would be considered a declaration of war on Kenya.
I saw them saying that they won't wait for the elections in 2027. They want to plan chaos, protests, burn people's property, cause death in Kenya so that they can overthrow the Kenyan government before 2027. I dare them to try.
US President Donald Trump is hosting leaders of 5 West African nations at the White House. This includes the presidents of Gabon, Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, Mauritania and Senegal. The meeting will focus on deepening economic partnerships, including private sector investment and possibly enhanced security cooperation. Sharon Rice Pease reports that the meeting is also seen as part of efforts to counter Chinese and Russian influence in the region.
When police found the teenager's body in the town of Rawat, they said her family
to a man
claimed
who
she
became
took
a
her own
symbol
life.
of hope
Her
to a
father
country
is now in
beset
police
by
custody.
corruption. And
We do apologize for that incorrect soundbite. The Democratic Alliance Party in South Africa will today lay criminal charges against Police Minister Senzo Mchunu at the Cape Town Central Police Station in the Western Cape Province. This is in light of explosive allegations by KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Lieutenant General Ndandla Mkhwanazi that Mchunu has ties with criminal syndicates. Mkhwanazi also alleged that top police officials are involved in criminal activities. The DA says laying criminal charges against Mchunu forms part of their ongoing efforts to hold those in power accountable and to protect the rule of law. Meanwhile, Special Crimes Investigator Mike Bolhace has described Vusumuzi Cat Matlala as a dangerous person. Mkhwanazi has also alleged that Matlala has close ties with Mchunu. However, the minister has denied any relationship with the businessman or any involvement in the police service medical services tender awarded to Matlala. The tender was worth around $20 million but was cancelled earlier this year. Matlala is currently behind bars on charges of attempted murder, money laundering and conspiracy to commit murder. Bolhace says Matlala's reign of terror is far from over.
Dangerous man, and also a very important man for those who are involved with organized crime, especially for those in government who are involved and senior police officials. He is a strong arm for those, and he will commit the dirty works. And he is operating, funding, and in cahoots with Boko Haram, and I would say those in the taxi industry as well, the hitmen and the gangsters there.
And finally, Tunisian opposition leader Rashid Ghannouchi has been sentenced to 14 years in prison, adding to a string of other jail terms he has received in separate cases. Ghannouchi, who heads the moderate Islamist Edna party, was among 18 politicians and officials sentenced on Tuesday for conspiring against state security. Ghannouchi's defense team denied the charges brought against the 84-year-old, saying the proceedings did not meet the standards of a fair trial. Ganucci has been in jail since 2023 and refused to attend Tuesday's sentencing remotely. For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulo Wepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective. Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time.
In our headlines this hour, in a coaching shake-up, Nigeria's Football Federation has handed the reins of the home-based Super Eagles to Eric Sekochel. Belgium's Remco Evenepoel has the yellow jersey in his side as the leading contenders for the Tour de France. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Opposition parties in Cameroon have once again failed to unite behind a single candidate to challenge the 92-year-old President Paul Biya in October's presidential election. Meeting in the capital, Yaoundé, the parties remain divided, raising concern among civil society and political analysts. And they warn that without a united front, Biya, the world's oldest sitting head of state, is likely to secure another term, extending his 4-decade grip on power. Moki Kinzeka reports from Yaoundé.
About 30 opposition party leaders in Cameroon have been meeting in Yaoundé to present a single candidate to face 92-year-old Paul Biya in the country's October presidential election. Biya has ruled Cameroon for over 4 decades, and the opposition often accuses him of rigging elections to maintain his grip on power. Opposition political parties say if they unite and present a single candidate, they will increase their chances of victory in the polls. Surprisingly, all of the opposition political party leaders attending the meetings in Yaoundé insist that they will be candidates in the elections. Prince Michael Ngwese Ekoso, national president of the opposition United Socialist Democratic Party, is one of them. He says a consensual candidate should be one who will be ready to make Cameroon a federal republic with the English-speaking and French-speaking regions of the country constituting 2 federal states because of their linguistic, historic, and cultural identities.
The reason why I am running for the presidential election in Cameroon stems from a vision which is rooted on the principles of one nation, 2 systems within the context of a federal constitution. I have not only the stamina but the moral ability to solve the problems of Cameroonians, especially when it comes to the crisis that has been rocking the English-speaking regions of Cameroon.
Cameroon's civil society groups say the opposition failing to agree on a single candidate will mean giving victory to Paul Biya to continue his over 4-decade rule. Edward Faure, member of Cameroon's civil society, says Cameroonians who are craving for a change want the opposition to be united and strong in facing Biya instead of competing in dispersed ranks.
I don't know if our opposition leaders know what Cameroonians want. Everyone is coming and announcing his or her candidacy. I see this as greed, total greed on the part of our opposition leaders. It is greed. The consequences can be very disastrous if the opposition doesn't take power in October.
Faure says it is high time the fragmented opposition gets united to revive all state institutions Biya has ruined, organize an inclusive national dialogue to end the separatist crisis that has claimed more than 6,000 lives in Cameroon's western regions, and improve living conditions for those stuck in hunger and poverty. He says a consensual candidate should be one who will rule for a maximum period of 3 years, during which free, fair, and transparent elections will be organized. Prince Mokoso says all is not lost, although the opposition is yet to be united in agreeing on a single candidate to face Biya.
It's true that there are many candidates that have declared themselves, but we must understand that there are many other different perspectives that we are working on to produce a consensual candidate of the opposition party. It is not an impossibility, so let us wait and see between now and probably the end of July.
While the opposition remains divided, Cameroon's ruling party, the CPDM, has been meeting to mobilize support for Biya come October. Senator Tabe Tando is a supporter of President Paul Biya.
We, the members of the party, have repeatedly said that he is our candidate, not necessarily by the constitution of the party, but by his deeds and works, by his posture, by his dreams, by his visionary ability to what he wants for the people of Cameroon. So we have been invited to be reminded that he is our candidate. It's agreed. We have also come to reaffirm to him through our Secretary General of the presidency that he should tell him that we have adopted an irreversible position that come October, he's going to be our party candidate. We are going to vote for him.
The Center for Human Rights and Democracy in Central Africa reports that Cameroon's fragmented opposition, which is made up of about 400 political parties, will find it difficult to beat Biya or any CPDM candidate in an election should the opposition fail to unite. Reporting for Channel Africa, this is Moki Kinzaka in Yaoundé, Cameroon.
Let's go now to Kenya, where the Kenyan President William Ruto has angrily denounced anti-government protesters, vowing to use whatever means necessary to ensure peace and stability. In his first public comments since deadly protests, Ruto accused his opponents of trying to force him from power. Kenya's Human Rights Commission says 31 people died and more than 100 were injured during Monday's clashes. Ruto suggested protesters should be shot at. We're joined now by Alex Kairi, our Kenyan correspondent, to unpack the latest in terms of what's happening there. Alex, thanks for joining us. How are you this Thursday?
Very okay here. Cold, yes, but yes, very interesting moments here in Kenya, as you say.
Right. And what is the latest in terms of protests in Kenya? What can you tell us?
We're just counting the losses, still trying to document the death toll, and those people have been injured, and the properties that were destroyed. And as you just mentioned, rightfully in the item that we just read over there, we're still reeling from the president's address yesterday. It came out of nowhere, and in itself, it's speaking of a president who is very, very angry, seems to be frustrated. And even if you had got to go through our papers today across the country, the mood is that something is clearly very wrong with the president, because he seems to be actually urging the police to keep on killing people, and it's really eliciting a lot of reactions from across the country. And we're expecting more reactions today as the death toll also is expected to rise as we speak.
I mean, how does he even justify these kinds of words, the president having ordered the police to shoot the protesters? And as you say, what you make of the violence insinuated in the statements in terms of how protesters should be handled is that the president is angry. But how would he justify saying things like this?
He says that under the Kenyan law, anybody who attacks a police station is guilty of a terrorist attack or crimes of terrorism. And this in itself actually negates the constitution of Kenya in terms of police brutality and how the police are supposed to handle members of the public. And the fact that this comes a few days after the Interior CS, who's in charge of security, also called on the police to kill protesters who try to come to the police station, or just anybody who's seen coming close to a police station. Actually, it's raising a lot of fears and justifying that order by the CS was actually given to him by the president himself. And it's quite interesting because it's actually not anchored on any law. and completely unjustified. And we know that the president sometimes speaks out of emotion, and this in itself is what the media here in Kenya is calling out on him to try to manage his emotions, because he is supposed to be a father figure. But as you also indicated in the news, what people are forgetting is that the last protests were not actually Gen Z protests. Gen Z did not participate. It was a protest that was actually called by the government itself, and the people that they were fighting are not known to the locals. So this clearly talks about a government that is fighting gangs that it has fronted, and actually the people who have suffered more are civilians who are not armed. We are talking about a case of a child in outside Nairobi who was shot 3 times and then put to a police cell. He was just aged 15 years. He wasn't participating in the protest. Another girl aged 12 years was killed in Kiambu County. A bullet found her in the house watching television. So this in itself tells you that the highest number of casualties were not protesters. Yet, still, this is a protest that actually saw the second highest number of people killed since 2024. So the number is around 33 people who have been killed, but we are still documenting on the same.
This is shocking because over and above them not being protesters, they also don't seem to be innocent bystanders. They were not even in any vicinity in terms of what was happening, and the nature of the wounds found on the victims would suggest that there's something either that's being hidden going on here, or some, serious sinister as far as that is concerned. This is shocking, Alex. And on Monday, the Human Rights Commission said at least 31 people were killed and over 100 injured. How far do you know as far as those figures are concerned?
As far as we are concerned, the government statement talked about 11 people dead. The KNCHR, which is a government human rights body, talked about 31, and still we are receiving reports of people have been killed, not yet documented. So the number is expected to officially rise. But now the most interesting thing is that what a trend that is emerging is that whenever police officers shot and killed somebody or even injured that person, they rushed these persons or the victims to local hospitals, public hospitals, where bullets are removed from their bodies before they are released to their families, and then documents destroyed. We are dealing with a case in Limuru. I talked about the child who was shot 3 times, but the police officers took that boy to the hospital, had the bullets removed, and then the medical documents retained by the police actually taken away from the father, but the father was forced to pay for the bills that they incurred. Then the boy was later on taken to a police station and actually took the intervention of a Law Society of Kenya to have the boy released from custody. Right now, as we speak, he is at the Kenyatta National Hospital. His wounds being cleaned, but the bullets are not yet found. This is not an isolated case, because we also have around 8 cases where bodies are being taken for burial, but the bullets had been removed without the family's consent and with the post-mortems officially done. So it's a very, very scary moment, and we are following up. It's really, really, really scary, because the police, whatever they're doing is actually not legal and goes against all the laws that actually govern the land and also matters. So it's very, very, very scary.
Absolutely, on a regional and international level. Meanwhile, just yesterday, we were talking about reports that 2 hospitals in Kenya sustained damage during protests that were to mark the 35th anniversary of pro-democracy rallies. These demonstrations having left at least 11 people dead, according to witnesses. What has the president since responded to that, before responding to these violent acts or violent insinuations in terms of how the police should be handling protesters?
Actually, the president hasn't said anything at all until yesterday, since the protest broke out. And actually, whatever came out of his mouth yesterday shocked everybody, because he had been quiet all along before and even after the protest until yesterday. So we really don't know how this came about, but we still don't understand what brought this case, these utterances, and what pushed him to do that. But yes, it's true that we had 2 cases of hospitals being attacked beyond police stations. One was in the outskirts of Nairobi in a county called Kajiado, where a hospital was attacked by hired criminals who burst into the facility, took out patients, and then actually tried to stop a CS operation that was underway in one of the theaters, and forcing the doctor actually to intervene and plead with them before she could also save the child and the mother. So it was very, very scary, and actually the doctor has spoken to us. There's another case in Kiambu County where a hospital was also attacked, and the criminals stopped mothers who are there to give birth and actually kicked them out of the facility, but still no statement from the Ministry of Health nor from the president or any other institution that is concerned with the government, nor anything to do with the health sector. However, the health caucus that involves medics have condemned that act and actually released a statement to the same and called on the CS in charge of health to also speak to it, but he has not so far done so.
And one would think that that would be the first thing the president would address in terms of the health facilities and patient care, with all these protests and injuries resulting from them. Of course, there's the deaths that come as precedents, but that's something he should have spoken of before, insinuating violence be implemented on protesters. It's shocking. Let's leave it there for now, Alex. We're going to continue to check in with you in Kenya, as well as our other journalists and correspondents there. Crazy times we're living in. I don't know what's going on in Kenya. How did we get to this, and what needs to happen now? Alex Kaire, our Kenyan correspondent.
Você é fluente em português? É apaixonado por rádio e quer trabalhar na África do Sul? Você tem documentos que o qualificam para trabalhar na África do Sul? Nesse caso, podemos ter uma oportunidade para você trabalhar no Canal África. Envie seu currículo e demonstração para Canal África at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Lembre-se, se você não receber alguma resposta nossa em 14 dias, isso significa que você não foi selecionado. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
One wonders what's going on in Kenya, and of course that's been a developing story. I think it's been 2 months of us now speaking about Kenya at least every 2 days in the show. And it's just worrying to see how we can go from a country that was well run. Yes, of course, we know there are things that get hidden that we don't hear about in the media. And then suddenly all these stories coming up about violence against protesters, even the protests themselves, in terms of how activists and the people in the country are feeling that they're not being given a voice to voice out, whatever it is their concerns are in terms of governance in the country, and so on and so on. When the hospitals get attacked, for me, that's when it starts going downhill. It becomes now almost like a war zone.
Yeah, troubling times, not just for Kenya, but the East African region in general. And we go to Uganda now, where a new political force has emerged in Uganda with the official launch of the People's Front for Freedom. And that's a party that's linked to detained opposition leader Dr. Kizza Besigye. The launch event in Kampala drew supporters bearing his image despite his continued detention on treason charges since November last year. Besigye, a four-time presidential candidate and long-time critic of President Yoweri Museveni, was expected to address the gathering virtually or through a written message. And his arrest stems from accusations of plotting to overthrow the government, which his allies strongly deny. With elections just over a year away now, what does this new party hope to achieve? Well, joining us now is Harold Kaija, who's the Deputy Chief of Staff in charge of publicity, mobilization and political affairs for the People's Front for Freedom. Thanks very much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program, Mr. Kaija.
Thank you, Peter. I'm happy to join you this morning.
Great to hear from you. So what prompted the decision to launch the People's Front for Freedom now, especially with Dr. Besigye incarcerated?
Apparently, the political space in Uganda has been shrinking of multipartyism. What happens is the dictator in Kampala decided was to cripple all the political parties. divide them, and make sure that he had even said that by 2021, we'll never have a single opposition political party. He came to our party, gave a lot of money to the party president and the secretary general, and they decided to alienate, to try to scaffold the party, that it stops doing what we are doing. Because in the past, you must have been seeing reports of demonstration against the human abuse of human rights, the economy, corruption, and the rest. So he had wanted the political parties just only to keep at headquarters and make statements. So in that kind of situation, we who were against that kind of move, who felt that we cannot work for the junta, we got out and then started mobilizing. Eventually, we agreed to form the political party, the People's Front for Freedom, or what now we call the Freedom Party, PFF. So we say that you cannot do politics if you are not organized and you are not registered. Then eventually, we decided to register this political party around August last year. But we had a lot of challenges from the Electoral Commission. One, first of all, had refused to register our name because of having the word front, which they saw, I think, and they were treating it as a rebel outfit. They created another political party called PPEF. So they say that actually PFF sounds like PPF. We challenged them because one of our leaders is a lawyer. And eventually, after 6 months, just last month, on the 5th, that's when they gave us our registration certificate. And then we decided, because coming to the elections, we needed our people to contest on a party ticket. That's why we registered this political party.
We've seen in other countries across the continent, more recently in Cameroon now, where you've got a plethora of opposition parties that are not united. And in the end, what it does is it empowers and emboldens the governing parties. Is this going to be different in Uganda? Because yet another political party perhaps means more fragmentation of opposition politics.
Apparently, the situation looks abnormal because for you in South Africa, you are allowed to associate. But here the situation leads to fragmentation. Another political party, an opposition political party, the party president is a minister. But that party president says he's going to contest for presidency. That's called the Democratic Party, Minister of Justice. There's another political party which was the one that brought us independence, the Uganda People's Congress. The wife to the party president is another minister. So there is a way. In such a situation, such political parties cannot come out to oppose the establishment. So in that kind of situation, now what we are doing is, last week, our PFF signed a memorandum of understanding with another political party called the Alliance for National Transition. So we are trying to get like-minded political parties to have MOUs so that we join together and fight the junta, and then we try to pack those that we see or are now known to be working with the junta, so that there is a gap between those opposing and those who are working with oppressor.
Given the demographics of our continent, and Uganda's no exception, the youth are really going to be the lifeblood of any political party or any political change using the ballots. Is there strong youth participation in this party of yours?
True. Apparently, Uganda is the second in the world having the highest number of youth in our demography. So ignoring the youth, that would be suicidal. So all our focus is centering in addressing the issues that touch the youth. We have a huge following of the youth, especially those, the elite. Actually, if you see now, we've read about us that they see as a party that has now given trust to the elite, because apparently the elite had now started looking at politics as a game of those, the wannabes. So we're trying to say, guys, wait a minute, come in here, we can provide leadership. And then in a way, we are able to shape the narrative that eventually there is a good leadership that looks at the youth, looks at the women, and even those that are aged. Like the way we've designed our political party, there is an arm which we call the arm of eminent persons. That is majorly, these are people of high integrity, people who have been in office and people see their track records as trusted. So that arm is supposed to check another arm, which is called the cabinet, right, which is led by the chairperson. Now the eminent persons are led by Dr. Besige.
Okay, I understand. I think we're going to have to leave it there for today, but we'd love to chat to you again and to see how things are going and how things are developing. But for today, thank you so much indeed for joining us, Mr. Kaija. That's Harold Kaija, Deputy Chief of Staff in charge of Publicity, Mobilization and Political Affairs for a newly formed party under Dr. Besige called the People's Front for Freedom. It's time for your news headlines. A very good morning once again to Dwalane Tulongwepe.
SABC News headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Making headlines, Kenya's President William Ruto has warned against attempts to overthrow the government. Ruto's comments come as tensions remain high in the country amid anti-government protests. US President Donald Trump is hosting leaders of 5 West African nations at the White House. This includes the presidents of Gabon, Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, Mauritania and Senegal. And finally, the Action SA party in South Africa will lead a protest outside the KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Police Headquarters in Durban today to demand urgent action on the deepening crisis in the criminal justice system. This follows Provincial Police Commissioner Ntantla Mkhwanazi's allegations that senior police service officials, including Minister Senzo Mchunu, are corrupt and have ties with criminal syndicates and interfere in police operations. I will have details on these and other stories at 8 o'clock.
SABC News headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's check in with the world of sports now. Here's Fikile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Let me start off with rugby news this hour. The Junior Springboks continued their perfect start and sealed top spot in their group in the World Rugby Under-20 Championship after thrashing Scotland 73-14 on Wednesday in Calvisano in Italy. The South Africans also beat Australia 73-17 and England 32-22 to book their spot in the semi-finals. And they probably did enough to secure the spot and the top spot position for the playoffs, which are scheduled to take place next Monday. Playing with purpose and showcasing the skills, silky skill for that matter, the first half belonged to the Junior Boks, who scored at more than a point per minute as they crossed the Scottish try line 7 times. The Junior Boks lost a bit of momentum as Scotland stepped up their game, but the South Africans were probably also guilty of becoming a bit too loose as they tried to stretch their lead. They finally scored again on the hour mark as Everson stepped his way through the Scottish defence, and 4 minutes later Stephanus Linde at number 8 rounded off a brilliant team try that started from a counter-attack in their own 22 with the handling simply brilliant. Football news now. The South African national team is stepping up their preparations for the FIFA Under-17 Men's World Cup with the participation in the COSAFA organized Region 5 games in Namibia. The Vela Kumalo-led Amajimbo side is participating in an under-20 tournament with the under-17 team, testing the strength of the squad ahead of the World Cup tournament in Qatar, scheduled for November. The assistant coach, Thabo Mngomeni, says they are getting the much-needed test in this tournament.
Since you have mentioned that, of course, we are preparing for the World Cup. This is a good preparation for us. Teams like these, they give us tough time so that we can think what we can get on the World Cup stages. I think I can say we are thankful of this opportunity that we got here to prepare for the World Cup.
Now, boxing news. WBO junior bantamweight world champion Phumelela Qavu and his management team are settling in Las Vegas just a week before the historic unification bout against WBC world champion Jesse Rodriguez. The two boxers will also be fighting for Rodriguez's Prize Ring magazine title, and it's a proud moment for Qavu to be fighting for this important title.
Only the people who follow boxing know how big this fight is. I feel like not every South African know how this fight. To them, it's just another fight. Okay, another boxer is going to America. To them, that's all. But this fight is huge, man. It's really huge. It's really huge, and I know how huge it is. So that's why I've been focused. I've been staying away from everything that I should stay away from. Locked in, making sure I eat clean, making sure I train, and making sure, man, my mind is straight. So I'm really taking this fight seriously.
Finally, 7-time champion Novak Djokovic battled past Italy's Flavio Cobolli in a hard-fought match, securing his place in the Wimbledon semi-finals, where he will face Jannik Sinner in a highly anticipated showdown. The Serbian star, chasing a record 25th Grand Slam title, rallied from a set down to defeat Cobolli 6-7, 6, 6-2, 7-5 and 6-4. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Figile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Africa at Play with NATO and NETO chairman.
The Confederation of African Athletics, CAA President Mr. Hamad Kalkaba Malboum, talk to us about the state of athletics in Africa as it stands, and what picture are you looking at 5 years later?
Yeah, athletics in Africa is strong. We are able to organize our major events in time. Like this year, we will have the under-20 and under-18 African Championship in Nigeria. Next year, we will have the senior in Ghana. In 2027, we will go back to Algeria to organize the under-18 and under-20. And then 2028, we will have the senior championship in Gaborone in Botswana. Well, by this program, we can increase our performance. And at the same time, we are considering the fact that within the British Federation, they are identifying young talent every year within their national program, within the scholarship championship. And so the athletics in Africa is in good standard.
Live every Saturday and Sunday from 2 to 5 p.m. Central African Time. From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam. Rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
It's time for another look at the world of business. Good morning, Tabuso Luhuko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks, Peter, and good morning. US President Donald Trump maintains that the BRICS group of rapidly growing economies were hell-bent on destroying the US dollar's global dominance. This comes after the US intensified its opposition to the BRICS groups, Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa, cautioning that their efforts to challenge the dollar pose a risk to America's economic leadership.
I thought BRICS was, I said this about a year ago, and it largely broke up. But, there are a couple that hang around, but I thought it largely broke up. BRICS is not, in my opinion, not a serious threat. But what they're trying to do is destroy the dollar so that another country can take over and be the standard. And we're not going to lose the standard. at any time. If you have a smart president, you will never lose the standard. If you have a stupid president like the last one, you would lose the standard.
Lesotho has declared a national state of disaster due to an economic crisis fueled by mass unemployment. Government ministries have been ordered to allocate 2% of their budgets to job creation programs. The Prime Minister, Sam Matekane, says youth unemployment has been made worse by cuts to foreign aid and US tariffs. Morocco plans to build a 500-megawatt state-owned data center powered by renewable energy to strengthen the security of data storage. The country's digital minister, Amal El-Falah Segrochini, says that the center will be located in Dakhla. In Western Sahara, Chanduko Ligege reports.
Several countries are building state-owned data centers to ensure that sensitive data can be stored and processed within national borders. Morocco launched its first sovereign center in January. It has been offering cloud hosting services to local public and private organizations. Minister Segrochini says through this network of data centers, the kingdom not only asserts its digital sovereignty but also its ambition to become a regional digital hub serving Africa. Morocco plans to invest $1.22 billion on its digital modernization strategy, which includes artificial intelligence and expanding fiber optic deployment.
Emirates Global Aluminium says that the Ghanaian government had wrongfully terminated an agreement with its subsidiary, Guinea Alumina Corporation, after a year-long dispute over the construction of an alumina refinery. Guinea's military government suspended the corporation's bauxite exports and mining operations as part of West Africa's military-led state's increasingly aggressive push to extract greater benefits from the vast natural resources. The junta, which seized power in 2021 in the world's second-largest producer of bauxite, the primary ore used to produce aluminium, had demanded that miners present plans to build refineries in order to generate capital for the country. China has unveiled an ambitious youth employment program aimed at finding jobs for a record number of graduates. More than 12 million young people are set to graduate in the next few months. The BBC's Celia Hatton has the details.
Chinese officials have been unusually open in highlighting a looming concern. More than 12 million young people are set to earn college or university degrees in the next few months, a record number, and many could struggle to find jobs. Under a sweeping new plan, Beijing will subsidize entry-level jobs for companies hiring unemployed youth over the age of 16. An ongoing trade war with the United States is putting pressure on the Chinese economy, which was already struggling with mounting local debts and a shaky property sector.
$1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 530. Botswana, 13.21. Kenya, 128 shilling 594. And Zambia, 24 kwacha 30. The BRICS countries in Brazil, the dollar there will cost you 5 real 47. Russia, 78 rubles 23. India, 85 rupees 72. China, 7 yuan 17. And here in South Africa, the dollar is trading at 17 rand 79 cents. $1 is trading at 73 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Gold is trading at $3,222 and platinum $1,344 per ounce. Brand crude oil is at $14 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Thabisolo Huku.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
The South African Broadcasting Corporation, SABC Sport, brings you Chasing the Sun. And this is a powerful 5-part documentary series about the country's national rugby team, the Springboks, telling the rousing tale of their path to redemption and ultimate World Cup glory in 2019, starting the 13th of July at 7:30 Central African time in the evening on SABC2. Tune in every Sunday for the highs and the heartaches and the heroics that made rugby history. And you can stream each chapter on the mobile app SABC Plus anytime, anywhere. No subscription is needed. So don't miss Chasing the Sun this Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central Africa time on SABC2. Be there when history shines.
From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam, rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
USA BRICS.
All right, it's 7:44 Central African time. US President Donald Trump is intensifying his opposition to the BRICS grouping of rapidly growing economies, Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa, cautioning that their efforts to challenge the US dollar's global dominance poses a risk for America's economic leadership. But the question is, why is Donald Trump so concerned about BRICS? Channel Africa business reporter Innocent Samusa picks up the story for us.
I thought BRICS was, I said this about a year ago, and it largely broke up. But, there are a couple that hang around, but I thought it largely broke up. BRICS is not, in my opinion, not a serious threat. But what they're trying to do is destroy the dollar so that another country can take over and be the standard. And we're not going to lose the standard at any time. If you have a smart president, you will never lose the standard. If you have a stupid president like the last one, you would lose the standard. You wouldn't have the dollar as you. And if we lost the world standard dollar, that would be like losing a war, a major world war. We would not be the same country any longer. We're not going to let that happen. The dollar, you ever hear the expression, dollar is king? The dollar is king. We're going to keep it that way.
That's the voice of US President Donald Trump expressing his views regarding the BRICS bloc, just as BRICS leaders convened in Rio de Janeiro this week for their annual summit. Trump vowed to slap an additional 10% tariff on any nation backing the group. But why is Donald Trump so afraid of BRICS? CEO of Ndoro Global Advisory, Mthunzi Mdwaba, weighs in.
In terms of why Donald Trump is so afraid of BRICS, you will be aware that the United Nations was started by the United States of America under the guise of loving multilateralism. But actually, the US has always known that in the UN, they'll always be in charge, and therefore, although it looks ostensibly like multilateralism, it's actually unilateralism. They're able to dictate what happens. And so are all the other platforms, the G20, the G7, they were all started by the United States and the Europeans and so on. So BRICS is actually the only platform that works being initiated by an alternative platform in terms of the multipolarity that the world is now presenting.
Mdwaba says BRICS represents a powerful alliance that operates beyond America's control.
So BRICS provides an alternative that they have no control over. There's absolutely no control. And BRICS presents a powerhouse, especially now that it's BRICS Plus. You've got powers like Iran. Of course, you know what Iran is doing at the moment with Israel. The US is aligned to Israel. There's also the Palestinian war that South Africa, as part of BRICS, is protected by the other BRICS countries and so on and so on.
The question is, can South Africa thrive without America? And what would it take to get there?
Absolutely. We've always been able to do without America. AGOA has actually been a very big heavyweight over our necks. Us have said for years that it needs to go. So that we can be self-sufficient, we can be independent. We are very able to do things for ourselves. And Trump knows this is fear. This is the last throw of the dice. This is the last kick of the horse. And what it will take is that We focus on working with the other BRICS countries in South Africa. We focus on trade amongst ourselves. We focus on intra-trade within Africa. We focus on the Africa Free Trade Agreement and make sure that the self-sufficiency is amongst us as a collective. We are able to work on policies that are good for us as the developing world. We are able to implement these policies, and we're able to demonstrate that we can do without the US. We just need to do it once, and then we can have the confidence to walk on by ourselves and then run.
For Channel Africa News, I am Innocent Simosa in Johannesburg.
It's now just before 10 minutes to the top of the hour, Central African Time, 7:49. Africa's most influential business leaders, investors, policymakers and entrepreneurs are gathering in the city of Cape Town, South Africa today for the Africa Unlocked conference hosted by Standard Bank Business and Commercial Banking. The meeting is in its second year and has already cemented itself as a key platform on discussions affecting the continent. Topics at the conference include trade wars, advancing Africa's economic sovereignty, unlocking SME growth, and agriculture. For more on this, Louis van Ravenstein, Group Head of Agribusiness at Business and Commercial Banking, Standard Bank Group, joins us on the line. Louis, how are you on this Thursday?
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity, and good morning to your listeners. We're well in a cool Cape Town. The sun is just rising.
Well, thanks for making time for us. Firstly, please tell us more about the Africa Unlocked conference and what it hopes to achieve.
Thank you so much. Firstly, we're getting business leaders across the continent together from about 15, 16 countries. It's about 120 of our top business customers coming together here in Cape Town, from as far as Ghana to Kenya, down to South Africa. It's all about how does business shape Africa's tomorrow. It's about this big opportunity of the Africa continent. It's how do we do more trade together? How do we work more together? And how do we capture this big opportunity? And from our side, my specific focus is on the agriculture opportunity and on food security to capture that.
It's in its second year now, as we said in our introduction. What have some of the previous learnings that went into this, what have they been? And how have you seen the gathering grow?
I think the clients are finding it very fruitful and beneficial because they are meeting like-minded people that are entrepreneurs, family-owned businesses, large family-owned businesses from all these countries. And yes, we look at our products and our local production. If you think about agriculture again, how do we solve for food security? How do we create employment? And how do we drive the GDP of these countries? If you look at agriculture, for example, it contributes about 30% of the GDP in Africa. So it's a very important sector, and everybody is part of the agriculture value chain. From starting up, you have your first coffee, and we know coffee is produced in Uganda and Kenya and Tanzania, and you have your breakfast during the day. So food and clothing is all important to us. And what we find the customers see the most value in is hearing success stories about other customers that's gone through challenges and how they have innovated and how they've used technology to overcome this and grow their businesses. You know, we all lived through COVID, and how did that impact them? We lived through climate, and we need to see how can business be more sustainable. And each of these customers have got a story to tell. The one customer on our panel's business is over 100 years old, and they've been banking with Standard Bank. So I think that type of learnings that we can learn from each other is a big benefit. And another benefit of this conference is matching people together with trade opportunities. Again, last night at the function, the pre-function, you could see our client from South Africa exporting grapes to Kenya. Just want to meet his immediate customers, don't want to work through middlemen, and he captures that opportunity. So there's definitely tangible benefits of bringing these people together and thought leaders to talk about these trends and themes that is impacting us about world trade, geopolitics, tariffs, etc.
Agriculture plays a pivotal role on the continent's economy, and you touched on that, and that's your focus in the chats, the engagements. Some of the mechanisms that have been cited as what's needed to ensure that this industry benefits the continent is the mechanism of cooperatives. What is your view in terms of how this can reach or help us reach our potential and food security potential in the continent?
Yeah, I think it's a very important aspect you're raising there. The cooperatives is not like the cooperatives in the South Africa point of view, which is big commercial corporate businesses, but the rest of the continent, your cooperatives, your SACCOs, which is your savings and credit businesses, they bring small-scale farmers together. And we know that in the Africa continent, around 70 to 80% of produce is produced by small-scale farmers. It's not commercial farmers, and it's much better to have a system where there's a SACCO or a co-op with these 100 or maybe thousands or 10,000s of small-scale farmers form a cooperative together. It's a formal body which is registered. It's got a board, it's got financial controls, and they've got aspects on lending to each other. They've got stock files, they've got savings side. So for us, that's a very good way to bring people together and make sure they collaborate. So if you give lending into that cooperative for us, or to the SACCO or the cooperative, they can extend funding to their farmers for input, or funding school fees or whatnot, and they can add to their cattle or to their livestock or their plantings. And we know that they are connected to that SACCO. It's a community, it's a family type environment, and they will come back and they will deliver the goods to that SACCO and that co-op. And for us as a bank, we like that ecosystem, that value chain of a certain commodity with a certain SACCO or co-op, and then we play in that value chain. It's much easier, it's much better from a risk point of view, and I think it's more sustainable over the long term to work with these SACCOs and co-ops. It's amazing institutions, and I think they play a critical role on the African continent.
On another one of the topics at the conference, which is trade wars, we know that the U.S.'s President Donald Trump has shared some insights in terms of how different countries will have tariffs and a certain amount of percent of those tariffs in efforts to boost manufacturing for the U.S. There's concern as far as within the country, for example, our South African sugar exports to the United States in terms of the impact that these tariffs will have. Is this a deep concern in your view in the space of agriculture, or not so much of a major setback?
I think it brings in a lot of uncertainty, and it brings aspects around how do we trust and how do we work with America as an exporter. So I think it's a time to be calm, and I think it's a time where we must work with our government and governments across the continent and how we collaborate and find a mutual beneficial agreement with America. America is an important market. We cannot say it's not an important market. All markets are important for us because when we export, it gives us option, it gives us choice, it gives us foreign exchange. There's a price benefit to exporting to higher LSM countries. So it's an important market. So we need to work with industry bodies, sector bodies, and government and get to a mutual beneficial arrangement. So we are exporting about 4% of all our exports to America. It doesn't sound to be too big, and people can say it's not important. It's actually been the market that's been growing the fastest of our agricultural produce, maybe from a low base, but it is growing year on year. We are exporting citrus there, we are exporting table grapes there, we're exporting wine there, we're exporting certain fruits there. So it is important for those farmers, and for them just to go and find another market is not that easy because there's other challenges with other markets. There's also tariffs in certain markets. There's also phytosanitary requirements. But what we're saying to our customers is keep on producing efficiently. Make sure you can put a good product on the market. There will still be demand in America, But there's also Europe and UK, where we've got huge markets. It's the Middle East. We have to develop those markets. It's the East into China and India. We have to develop those markets. And then the big opportunity, I again say, is the Africa continent, where we've got a food shortage. We're still importing $50 billion of food annually into Africa, and we can produce many of that food locally. We can add value to them. We can create jobs. So I do think it's a balanced approach, and we have to look at all these opportunities. We mustn't close the market. So I think America is still important to us, and we have to get to a good agreement.
Well, let's leave it there for today, Louis. Thank you so much, and enjoy your rest of the stay in Cape Town.
Thank you so much. Have a nice day for you and your viewers.
Thank
Goodbye.
you. Louis van Ravenstein is Group Head of Agribusiness at Business and Commercial Banking Standard Bank Group. They are organizing the Africa Unlocked Conference, which is taking place in Cape Town. He was joining us live from that conference. In terms of timing,
it's 8 o'clock Central African time. A very good morning to you if you've just joined us. This is the third and final hour of the program. I'm Peter Ndoro.
and I'm Asanda Beda, and we get into the last hour of Africa Rise and Shine, coming to you via www.channelafrica.co.za, our SABC Plus app, and we are live streaming at Channel Africa 1 is our handle on YouTube.
Coming up, I had a fascinating conversation with the Executive Director of UN AIDS, Winnie Byanyima, and she talked about the UN AIDS report for 2024, and there's some stark warnings there, especially after the funding to AIDS, particularly in developing nations, was cut by the United States, and diminishing funding from other developed nations as well. That conversation is coming up after the news with Joalani Tulo Mwepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Kenya's President William Ruto has warned against attempts to overthrow the government. Ruto's comments come as tensions remain high in the country amid anti-government protests. Kenya's Human Rights Commission says 31 people died and more than 100 were injured during Monday's clashes. Speaking during a visit to a construction site, Ruto said anyone taking part in looting and arson during anti-government protests in the country should be shot in the leg. Ruto said attacks on police would be considered a declaration of war on Kenya.
I saw them saying that they won't wait for the elections in 2027. They want to plan chaos, protests, burn people's property, cause death in Kenya, so that they can overthrow the Kenyan government before 2027. I dare them to try.
US President Donald Trump is hosting leaders of 5 West African nations at the White House. This includes the presidents of Gabon, Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, Mauritania and Senegal. The meeting will focus on deepening economic partnerships, including private sector investment and possibly enhanced security cooperation. Sharon Bryce-Pease reports that the meeting is also seen as part of efforts to counter Chinese and Russian influence in the region.
According to the Washington-based think tank, the Brookings Institution, Trump is convening the mini-summit to link diplomacy with commercial partnerships in an effort to accelerate U.S. trade and investment and reassert a strategic presence in a region where U.S. influence had been eroding. A White House official is quoted as saying that Trump believed African countries offered incredible commercial opportunities which could benefit both the American people and their African partners. The meeting comes as the U.S. administration pivots away from foreign aid, including its shuttering of the USAID agency, which funded scores of development projects across Africa, to focus on trade and investment to drive mutual prosperity.
The Democratic Alliance Party in South Africa will today lay criminal charges against Police Minister Senzo Mchunu at the Cape Town Central Police Station in the Western Cape Province. This is in light of explosive allegations by KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi that Mchunu has ties with criminal syndicates. Mkhwanazi also alleged that top police officials are involved in criminal activities. The DA says laying criminal charges against Mchunu forms part of the ongoing efforts to hold those in power accountable and to protect the rule of law. Meanwhile, the Action SA party will lead a protest outside the KZN Provincial Police Headquarters in Durban today to demand urgent action on the deepening crisis in the criminal justice system. This follows Mkhwanazi's allegations over police senior service officials, including the Police Minister Senzo Mchunu. Party Provincial Leader Zwakele Mncwango has criticized Speaker of the National Assembly Togo Didiza for assigning 3 portfolio committees to investigate the matter. Mncwango is adamant that there's a strong case against Mchunu.
I think the Speaker is also doing what normally does by ANC leadership to shield each other, protect each other. Because at the end of the day, that process she is recommending is not going to bear any fruit. And I think the President must be brave enough. There is enough information presented to suspend or remove the Minister. And more than that, the Minister was live in a portfolio committee where he denied knowing some of these individuals. And yesterday, he now admitted that actually he knows this person.
Greece has announced emergency measures to suspend the processing of asylum applications from North Africa after a rise in migrant numbers. Those arriving by boat will be arrested and detained. The Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis explained the decision.
You know the number of illegal migrants who have arrived in recent weeks. You understand that this emergency situation requires emergency response measures. Consequently, the Greek government has decided to inform the European Commission that with legislation that will be submitted to Parliament tomorrow, Greece will suspend the consideration of asylum applications, initially for 3 months, for those arriving from North Africa by sea.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulo Webe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In our sports headline, Barbara Banda credits Zambia's win against Senegal to a great team effort. And the South African pugilist Phumelela Klafu declares the Ring magazine title bout the biggest fight of his career. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Right, now it's 5 minutes past 8 Central African Time. And I've got to tell you about this conversation that I had with the Executive Director of UNAIDS. A stark warning from UNAIDS, its 2025 Global AIDS Update, AIDS Crisis and the Power to Transform, released yesterday with the South African National AIDS Council, shows that the hard-won progress against HIV is now at risk. UNAIDS estimates that if the current squeeze on donor money continues, most dramatically, the pause in U.S. foreign assistance and Washington's termination of its long-standing agreement with UNAIDS, up to 6.6 million more people could contract HIV and 4.2 million people could die of AIDS-related illnesses between now and 2029. This would erase the gains that have already cut new infections by 40% since 2010 and save more than 26 million lives. Well, to unpack the report and chart a way forward, I spoke to Ms. Winnie Byanyima, who's the Executive Director at UNAIDS and UN Under-Secretary General. I began by asking her about the main points that came out of the report.
Well, first, that from this report, which is a report about last year, but also looks a bit into this year because of the major disruption that happened in February. So it tells the story of last year and says, we were making progress against HIV and AIDS. We were moving new infections down and deaths down. And there's data about that since 2010, new infections had reduced by 40%, AIDS-related deaths by 54%, and so on. So it details one of the most successful, if not the most successful, public health response in history. It tells us that almost 41 million people are living with HIV, and out of those, slightly more than 36 million are on treatment. 9.2 still need to come on treatment. It tells us that there were 1.3 million new infections, almost the same as the year before, but the general trend was decline. But now, the report tells us with the sudden withdrawal of the single biggest HIV donor, combined with other aid cuts that other governments were making more gradually, that this progress, this march towards the end of AIDS, is at risk. So it points to the risk. It shows us that many countries are struggling, but that if this big hole created suddenly is not filled in the next months, years, we could get new infections rising by an additional 6 million in 4 years' time, 2029. We could have deaths increase additionally by more than 4 million by 2029. So the whole response is at huge risk unless there is the global solidarity that had got it up to here. So we sound the alarm through this report. First, that the global solidarity is key, that aid, which was helping the developing countries, particularly the most burdened here in Africa, needs to remain for the progress to remain. But also we highlight that these developing countries aren't lying down and waiting to die, that their governments are responding and some of them are reallocating money for HIV. They are looking for cost-effective ways to deliver the same services that were being funded externally. They are doing everything possible. And that communities who have been at the heart of this response, also delivering services to their people, aren't giving up. They're also looking for ways to continue keeping people on treatment. So there's much going on as countries take over financial responsibility for their responses. And we're saying to the other governments that this is a global problem, global solidarity has to remain. But further, we're saying to them, open other flows of money, because African countries aren't raising the domestic revenues they need because of structural barriers in the global economy, such as tax dodging that costs them $88 billion every year through illicit financial flows. We need a convention to close those loopholes. It's waiting there. It's being negotiated at the UN, but the same rich countries are reluctant to complete that. We're saying, get serious. Let's help Africa to collect the resources that it's due. The debt burden is a result of skyrocketing interest rates that are not a responsibility of the African countries, but it is what it is. They found themselves there because of a war in Ukraine, because of this and that, COVID. These are external factors that led to a multiplying of the interest rate on their debt. Now they pay 3-4 times more to debt repayment than to health. So restructure the debt, and they have agreed, they have made resolutions in Seville, but we are saying, get on with it. Have a restructuring mechanism that restructures fast and gives enough space to pay. for the health of people. So this report is very much about pushing for global solidarity to remain, recognizing that developing countries already pay for their responses in the main, but are stepping in to pay even more, and to say that it's also about rights. It's also about rights. It's not just a financial problem. We see a backlash against the laws, the policies, the rights of people who are at risk, and that without these, people can't come forward to get the services they need. Life-saving services that they need, they can only come if they are in an enabling environment where they are not criminalized, where stigma and discrimination is coming down, where there's no violence against them. I'm talking about the most vulnerable groups: LGBTQ people, sex workers, people who inject drugs, girls and young women in Africa, mostly from poor backgrounds. So these people's rights must first be respected before they can even show up to get what they need. So this report torches this disruption and offers solutions for it, and calls on countries, rich and poor, to stay committed in ending this crisis. It can. It also torches new opportunities. There are new opportunities that would help us to get to the end of AIDS much faster. These are prevention tools, especially. We have amazing new technologies that are still being hoarded by the innovators in America. I'm talking of Lenacapavir, which, if they could put greed aside and license companies in every region to produce generics at a low price, we could be on our way to controlling new infections, ending them, because an injection that's twice yearly, that has an almost complete prevention effect, they are 99% efficacy, around there. If you could roll this out for young people here in Africa, girls especially, for LGBTQ, for gay men in hiding from the law in Uganda, in wherever, you would move quickly towards ending new infections, but it's being held back because of maximizing profit. It was licensed by the FDA like a week or two ago, but it's costing $28,000 per person per year in America. Researchers in Liverpool have told us it could cost $25 per person per year if you rolled it out for 5 or so million people. And that's possible. But they are holding it and going to maximize profits for many years before they allow every continent to produce for itself. So these are the opportunities that this report highlights, that we can move towards ending AIDS. We need countries to come together. We need to push companies to do the right thing. We can end AIDS.
We had a little bit of a hiccup in terms of COVID-19 with the fight against HIV. Had we recovered before this massive funding shortfall came about?
Good question. We were still off track, because really the targets that were set, and this report points it out, we have a target, treatment targets we call 95, 95, 95. This is about getting people tested, getting them on treatment, and getting them to adhere to treatment. Those targets had been achieved for about 8 countries only. These are targets for 2025, only 8 countries. There were a few others on their way to achieving them. So we were not on track. But now this disruption is throwing us further off course. And you're right, COVID also pushed us back. So we see that the lack of global cooperation is what really makes, first of all, an outbreak to become a pandemic. And once it becomes a pandemic, to kill more people and last longer than it should. We could have come out of COVID much faster if the vaccine had been shared equitably across the world. But Africa was at the back of the queue waiting as its people died. And so the delays that come from lack of global cooperation, maximizing profits, are what cost lives. So our reports are there to show the way, what can be, what needs to be done in order to end the disease. We need the political will of leaders to do what is right. We give them the evidence and we ask them to do what's right.
So the AIDS response was built on community activism. What role are community-led groups playing today, and how can they be better funded in your view?
You said it raised a good question. Again, this is one of the distinguishing features of the global AIDS response, that global AIDS response changed the way healthcare was provided globally. People went to clinics, to hospitals to see their doctor and to get tested and treated for whatever illness. HIV took services, health services, out of hospitals and clinics into the community. These were innovations made to find solutions around stigma, discrimination, criminalization, all those things that were pushing people away from coming forward. Now, by the time this disruption came, 25% of all the resources coming from the external resources were going through civil society to serve people, to communities to serve their own people. 25% of the total. You can compare that with other health interventions for other diseases, 10%. But HIV more than doubled that. Reason, because there was evidence to show that people will trust their own peers and be served in dignity, but will not come when the stigma and discrimination is high, when criminal laws are being enforced. So now civil society has been upended because a lot of their funding was coming from external sources. What we are telling governments today, who are beginning to take over their own and finance domestically, is you have to keep communities at the center and fund them to be part of your health system to deliver services. You can't do it alone, government. I've seen some governments telling these key populations that, please, we have got services for you, show up at the outpatient department of your hospital. Well, it's good to offer, but it's not automatic that people will show up there. If you're a gay man in Uganda and you're running away, you're hiding from a harsh law. Tell me how you go before a health worker in a public utility and say to them, I need prevention because I am gay. You will not say it. You may not show up because you might be shown up. You might be reported to law enforcement. If you're a girl here in South Africa, schoolgirl, but already having sex, and you're scared that you could be having sex, you can't force your partner to wear a condom. You want to go and get PrEP. How will you go for PrEP to a public utility where your aunt might find her there waiting also for her treatment? Yeah, you can't. So services that are delivered safely by peers are what works for many, many groups of people. And so, yes, to answer your question, along with civil society, is critical. The role of communities are critical in the success of this response. And as governments take over and fund for themselves, they must make space and fund civil society as part of their delivery system. This is one of the most important messages of this report too.
And I suppose it's no coincidence that this report is launched in South Africa and you're working with the Ministry of Health here in South Africa. Given the HIV burden that the country has been bearing, I wonder what lessons can be learned from South Africa's domestic AIDS response that perhaps can be scaled up in other parts of the continent.
Oh, this country inspires me, makes me feel proud as an African, because South Africa came late to the response, as you know, in the history, but it came with ambition and found a very large epidemic, but has been responding ambitiously and driving also the world in finding solutions for HIV. This is the country with the largest response, 8 million people living with HIV, and it has been able to put on treatment more than 6 million of those. That's no mean feat. And now, with this disruption, South Africa has identified everywhere where there has been an impact, where a clinic was closed, where data capturers were laid off. They know where their gap is. They've analyzed that. I've sat with civil society who did the analysis. I've sat with government who have the same analysis. They know where the gap is. And looking at the resources they have, they are taking steps to close that gap. I learned of this ambitious 1.1 million campaign to bring on treatment 1.1 million people in 1 year. That's ambition. But they don't even stop there. South Africa is continuing to fund the global response in spite of its own challenges on the research front. When the money was taken away by PEPFAR, South Africa has put down its own money and is working with Gates and the Wellcome Trust to continue the vaccine trials that will benefit the whole world. So I have greatest admiration, and we are here because of that. We want to show the world that, look, this is not charity. This is not about recipients of aid and givers of aid. This is about a global program based on solidarity, where developing countries are putting something on the table, and rich countries must also put their bit on the table, and to show them that it's possible. Solutions can be found, and they are right here. Solutions for funding, solutions around stigma and discrimination, and that solutions for children, mothers and babies. So we just need the political commitment to stay together to fight to the end. That is what this report is about, that we've been on an amazing journey and we can complete it.
So given the 2030 target to end AIDS as a public health threat, what 3 actions do you think must happen this year to keep that goal alive?
Okay. 1, all the countries, rich and poor, developed and developing, must address together the question of financing the gap. It's very important not to have these reversals in the gains we have made. We need to get back, but that doesn't mean going back to where we were. The second thing that needs to happen is the innovation, the transformation on how services are delivered, finding new ways, cost-effective ways for continuing to deliver services to those who need them. And the third thing is the access for key populations and women and girls. That has to do with rights and creating an enabling environment for people to come forward without fear to get what they need. We have to work on that rights front. Countries that have their criminal laws may not repeal them this year, but they can stop enforcing them. You know, you can have a policy of non-enforcement so that people can come forward. And you can also put money into communities to continue serving their people. So there are things to do that every country can do. Developing can work on their enabling environment and find new resources and be more cost effective. And the rich countries must continue to work on keeping the aid flowing, but while at the same time being more committed and quick on the debt restructuring, as well as on the global tax convention that will release or will plug the holes of tax dodging. These are things they can do. Plus, one last thing, all of us coming together to get Gilead and to do the right thing and license more companies to produce generics of this lenacapavir that can reach the people who need it, and also the other prevention tools that are presenting real opportunity for bringing down new infections.
As journalists,
I've made it 4, not 3.
that's fine. As journalists, we often get caught up talking about people with HIV and AIDS, and we forget often to speak to them directly. So I wonder what your message today to people living with HIV is, because I'm sure there's a lot of people that are worried and need some kind of hope.
Well, my message to people living with HIV is this, that, you know, this global HIV response came out of your struggle. You got up and fought for your lives. You did not accept to lie down and die. We, the rest of us, are standing right next to you to continue that fight. This fight is not about money. This fight is about rights. Money is being taken away to be put in weapons to make wars, to kill people, take away life. Money can be allocated to save lives. So it's about standing up once again and fighting for rights. And we need a global movement again to fight for these rights. So for me, it's a justice struggle. We've never won anything by just sitting there and waiting to be handed something. We've always fought. And my message to people living with HIV, hey, come out, let's fight, we are together, bring prices down, push governments, put the resources down. Lives are at stake and lives will be defended by you in the lead. That's my message.
So that's the Executive Director for UN AIDS, Winnie Byanyima, speaking to me about the UN AIDS report for 2025, which was released yesterday. It's time for your news headlines. Here's Jwalani Tulo Mwepe.
SABC News headlines. The African perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Making headlines, Kenya's President William Ruto has warned against attempts to overthrow the government. Ruto's comments come as tensions remain high in the country amid anti-government protests. The remains of a murdered Congolese customs worker beatified last month by the Vatican have been transferred to a cathedral in the city of Goma. Pope Leo has praised him as a martyr who preferred love for others over his own life. And finally, Greece has announced emergency measures to suspend the processing of asylum applications from North Africa after a rise in migrant numbers. Those arriving by boat will be arrested and detained. I will have details on these and other stories at 9 o'clock.
SABC News Headlines. The African Perspective.
And now let's check in with the world of sports. Here's Fikile Lingwati with our update.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Let's kick off with football news. Zambia women's national football team captain Barbara Banda has credited the team's first win at the CAF Women's Africa Cup of Nations WAFCON to great teamwork. In the fixture at the Stade El Bashir in Mohammedia, the Copper Queens responded to their frustrating 2-2 draw against host Morocco in the group opener to beat Senegal 3-2 and demonstrate their quest to fight for the title. Banda led the way for Zambia after she cancelled out an early goal for Senegal courtesy of Ngwena Ndiaye and make it 1-1. 6 minutes into the second half, Zambia retook their lead after Kunda Nanji turned the scorer, this time showing poise in the box to convert. Banda, who had terrorized the Senegalese defense all game, extended Zambia's lead in the 73rd minute with a second of the night, reacting fastest to a corner and firing home from close range. Despite Senegal pulling a goal back through Ndiaye, who converted from the penalty spot, Zambia held on to secure the vital win. On to rugby news now. The Junior Springboks continued their perfect start and sealed top spot in their group in the World Rugby Under-20 Championship after thrashing Scotland 73-14 on Wednesday in Calvisano in Italy. The South Africans also beat Australia 73-17 and England 32-22 to book their spot in the semi-finals, and they probably did enough to secure the top spot position for the playoffs, which are scheduled to take place next Monday. Playing with purpose and showcasing their silky skills, the first half belonged to the Junior Boks, who scored at more than a point per minute as they crossed the Scottish line 7 times. On to boxing news. WBO Junior Bantamweight World Champion Phumelela Kgafu and his management team are settling in Las Vegas just a week before the historic unification bout against WBC World Championship Jesse Rodriguez. The two boxers will also be fighting for Rodriguez's prize Ring Magazine title, and it's a proud moment for Kgafu to be fighting for this important title. Boxing doesn't enjoy the same coverage as football, rugby and cricket in the country, but the East London-born boxer reminds the people that next week's fight is very big.
I feel like only the people who follow boxing know how big this fight is. I feel like not every South African know how this fight. To them, it's just another fight. Okay, another boxer is going to America. To them, that's all. But this fight is huge, man. It's really huge. It's really huge, and I know how huge it is. So that's why I've been focused. I've been staying away from everything that I should stay away from. Locked in, making sure I eat clean, making sure I train, and making sure, man, my mind is straight. So I'm really taking this fight seriously. So
the flamboyant Kgafu says he will be looking colorful and the part on fight night.
There's really nothing special about it, but I'm going to unify. So you know, in kids I never disappoint. So I'll make sure I look apart. So yeah, even in my last fight I went for purple. Like I say, purple is a real color, so that I knew I was getting crowned. So that's why I went for purple. So now I'm already crowned, man. I'm already a king. You know, it's a king versus a king. Now we're just gonna see who's the real king. So so yeah, man. But it's gonna be a good kit. That's all I can say, and it's gonna look good on me, and actually I'm gonna look good in it, and I'm gonna do good.
For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fikile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Download the SABC app and take Channel Africa with you everywhere you go.
Africa, voici Abedi.
Oui, c'est moi.
Abedi est un passionné de musique dans l'âme. Il a un goût pour toutes sortes de musique et passe ses journées à écouter Channel Africa.
J'aime beaucoup la musique africaine.
Ok. Devinez quoi? Channel Africa veut aider Abedi et les mélomanes du monde entier à découvrir encore plus de musique incroyable. C'est pourquoi Channel Africa appelle les artistes africains à soumettre leur musique. Chers artistes, n'oubliez pas de nous fournir toutes vos informations pertinentes à l'email adresse musique@channelafrica.co.za. Les soumissions sont votre chance d'être entendues, mais elles ne garantissent pas une playlist. Toutes les soumissions seront soigneusement examinées pour voir si elles répondent aux exigences de notre station. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam, rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
It's time for your final business news update on Rise and Shine. Here's Tabiso Lihoko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks, Peter, and good morning. US President Donald Trump maintains that the BRICS group of rapidly growing economies were hell-bent on destroying the US dollar's global dominance. This comes after the US intensified its opposition to the BRICS groups, Brazil, Russia, China and South Africa, cautioning that their efforts to challenge the dollar pose a risk to America's economic leadership.
I thought BRICS was, I said this about a year ago, and it largely broke up. But, there are a couple that hang around, but I thought it largely broke up. BRICS is not, in my opinion, not a serious threat. But what they're trying to do is destroy the dollar so that another country can take over and be the standard. And we're not going to lose the standard at any time. If you have a smart president, you will never lose the standard. If you have a stupid president like the last one, you would lose the standard.
The South African Cane Growers Association has expressed concern about the 30% tariff on South African sugar exports to the US. The tariffs are set to take effect on the 1st of August. They say the move could render the country's sugar uncompetitive in the US and emphasized the need to protect the local industry from the ongoing threat of unfairly priced imports. The association represents over 20,000 small-scale farmers and 1,200 large-scale growers. Chief Executive Officer of SA Cane Growers, Dr. Thomas Fanke.
The increase in the tariff to the US will have an impact on the South African sugar industry. We send 24,000 tons of sugar to the US every year. And in the past, this was done at a zero import duty due to the quota. The 30% tariff on the sugar will make us uncompetitive in that market, and that will mean we will have to drop our price in order to compete with other countries.
Lesotho has declared a national state of disaster due to an economic crisis fueled by mass unemployment. Government ministries have been ordered to allocate 2% of their budgets to job creation programs. The Prime Minister, Sam Matekane, says youth unemployment has been made worse by cuts to foreign aid and US tariffs. Morocco plans to build a 500-megawatt state-owned data center powered by renewable energy to strengthen the security of data storage. The country's digital minister, Amal Al-Afala Segrochini, says that the center will be located in Dakhla, in Western Sahara. Chanduko Legege has the details.
Several countries are building state-owned data centers to ensure that sensitive data can be stored and processed within national borders. Morocco launched its first sovereign center in January. It has been offering cloud hosting services to local public and private organizations. Minister Segrochni says through this network of data centers, the kingdom not only asserts its digital sovereignty but also its ambition to become a regional digital hub serving Africa. Morocco plans to invest $1.22 billion on its digital modernization strategy, which includes artificial intelligence and expanding fiber optic deployment.
The US dollar has slipped further from a 2-week high versus major peers on Thursday as President Donald Trump's latest tariff salvos failed to shake markets, except in Brazil, where a threatened 50% levy sent the real sliding as much as 2.8% overnight. The dollar felt additional weight from a sharp decline in U.S. Treasury yields following a strong auction of 10-year notes on Wednesday, tempering worries about the Sell America narrative that had seen Treasuries, the dollar, and Wall Street stocks sold off in tandem earlier this year. Overall, investors were hungry for riskier assets, with the most damaging tariff scenarios looking increasingly unlikely, helping Nvidia become the first stock ever with a $4 trillion valuation and lifting cryptocurrency Bitcoin to an all-time peak just shy of $112,000. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira fast 30. Botswana 13 pula 21. Kenya 128 shilling 594, and Zambia 24 kwacha 30. The BRICS countries in Brazil, the dollar there will cost you 5 ril 47, Russia 78 rubles 23, India 85 rupees 72, China 71.17, and in South Africa the dollar will cost you 17 rand 79. 73 pence British pound, 85 euro, gold $3,322, platinum $1,344 per ounce, Brent crude oil $70.14 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Tabisolo Hoko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
The South African Broadcasting Corporation, SABC Sport, brings you Chasing the Sun, a powerful 5-part documentary series about the Springboks, that's the South African national rugby team, telling the rousing tale of their path to redemption and ultimate World Cup glory in 2019. Starts on the 13th of July at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC2 channel. Tune in every Sunday for the highs and the heartache, as well as the heroics that made rugby history. Stream each chapter on SABC Plus anytime, anywhere, and no subscription is needed. Don't miss Chasing the Sun this Sunday at 7:30 p.m. on SABC2. Be there when history shines.
A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
8:45 Central African Time. Let's talk about the National Commissioner of the South African Police Service, or the SAPS now. That's General Fani Masemola, who has denied closing the political killings task team in the country. The National Police Commissioner was briefing the media on Wednesday. This comes days after KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi dropped explosive allegations during a media briefing. He alleged that there was political interference in police investigations. To discuss this further, we're joined on the line by crime analyst and former SAPS Crime Analysis Center head, Dr. Chris de Kock. Dr. de Kock, thanks for making time for us on this Thursday.
Good morning, and good morning to the listeners.
Firstly, what did you make of what KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Police Commissioner Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi revealed this Sunday?
Well, I think he surprised everybody, not with his revelations or the allegations that he made, but he surprised that a provincial commissioner would stick his neck out as far as that and make such explosive revelations. But I know him from many, many years ago when I was working in the South African Police Service, and he was the acting national commissioner. And I must say, look, there's a few things I can say of him. Point number one, he hates lies, so he will talk very straight. Secondly, I think he doesn't worry much about politics. You know, he's not going to be pushed around by political issues. And then he's a crime fighter. He don't like crime and corruption at all. So I think it doesn't come to me as much of a surprise because I always had this respect for him. I think he was in a corner. I think he was in a corner. He had all of this information. He still have all of this information and maybe even more. Maybe he didn't put everything on the table. But I think he gave it through to his superiors. And I mean, he said it that there was some miscommunication between him and the minister and the national commissioner. So, and now that the national commissioner is actually supporting him, I even feel more that this should be thoroughly investigated, and the president should really open all taps that this whole thing, that we can see the whole thing, and that they can start to clean up the South African Police Service.
So this task team in question was set up to investigate political killings. When was it set up, and what did it achieve in terms of those investigations for our African leaders outside of the country? I mean, African listeners.
This task team, I look, I'm not 100% sure. It was set up quite a few years ago already, and according to what he said, there's about 130 something dockets, and that there's a lot of information. You see, what happened usually, this is something that it was set up for political killings in KZN, KwaZulu-Natal. But sometimes if we look at organized crime, you will investigate in a certain location, but it will take you to maybe even Cape Town or Gauteng, as it seems a lot of the links is up to Gauteng from KwaZulu-Natal. So according to what General Mangwanazi said, it seems there is a lot of information, and this was because of the work of this task team.
So the the National Commissioner General Fani Masemola has denied closing the political killings task team. What should we read into this differing reports as they pertain to what is happening within the police force in South Africa?
Well, I think if I listen to the National Commissioner and I listen Sunday to General Mangwanazi, that there's not much of a difference. I mean, he said, General Mangwanazi also said that the task team wasn't closed. And the same now applied to the National Commissioner, say he gave no instruction. It seems he received instructions from the minister, but that he did not give any instructions that this task team should be closed.
There were also claims by Mkhwanazi that there were links between an associate of the country's police minister, Senzo Mchunu, to a criminal underworld, which Mkhwanazi reportedly picked up from cell phone tracking. What do you make of this? Of course, Police Minister Senzo Mchunu has since issued a statement denying any ties with alleged criminals.
Yeah, you see, this will now be, I say this, you say that. That is why I say the president should get something going where all of this can be thoroughly investigated, thoroughly looked at, and then we will come to the real truth. But my view is, as I say, giving my knowledge of General Mangwanazi, that whatever he revealed here will definitely be also be investigated and found that this may be true. It's at this stage it's allegations. It's one allegation. This one is making an allegation against that person. But in the end, this is very important that this should really be totally revealed, because we can't work with the South African Police Service. We can't have a police service and even political actors which is involved in corruption. So either the minister should be absolved of this and found not guilty of any of this, or not. That is unfortunately where we are going. The fact of the matter is we can't allow corruption at that level. And we know we have corruption at that level. I mean, this is not the first time. This is not a surprise. 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago, the total top structure of the Crime Intelligence Division was standing in court for corruption.
So the president, you say, President Cyril Ramaphosa needs to step in here because public trust needs to be restored as well, because there are implications to how the current state of policing in South Africa is viewed by its citizens as a result of this debacle.
Definitely, the president should step in and do something, because public trust is at a very low level already.
Yeah.
Because of our high levels of crime, and especially violent crime. And now comes this corruption. Well, not that the public was not aware of previous corruption. And then also very important for the police service itself. Because I think there are lots of good police officers outside there doing a very good job and sticking their neck out. And this is frustrating them.
Yeah.
If officers and even then allegations about minister can do this, why should I fight these criminals?
Right. Let's leave it there, Dr. De Kock. We appreciate your time again here on Rise and Shine.
Okay, thanks, and thanks to the listeners.
Dr. Chris De Kock is a crime analyst and former South African Police Service Crime Analysis Center head. Today, we launch a new episode of our podcast, Channel Africa Conversations. The podcast talks to Africans across the continent and in the diaspora, looking at significant issues of our time. Peter, you present this podcast. So what did you talk to, and who did you talk to actually this week?
So this week I spoke to Dr. Jessie Kabwila, who's the Minister of Higher Education in Malawi. And she has only been in her job about 6 months, but she's hit the ground running and she's been able to do amazing things there. She's passionate about things like equity and making sure that everybody has access to education, tertiary education, but not just for the sake of it. She's determined that the education that they receive is fit for purpose in developing the country, developing the nation. And she's also passionate about dealing with issues around gender equity, patriarchy in particular, given some of the cultural norms across the continent. She is quite an energetic woman, I've got to tell you. Here she is sharing some of her thoughts.
Patriarchy is alive and not only in Malawi, it is alive and well regionally and even globally. But what we are doing, as for me, I'm really pushing affirmative action. Affirmative action because the truth of the matter is the higher education sector, the playing field is not leveled. We still have women being defined as subhuman, and people, I don't know how many times I have to remind people that I'm Dr. Kabwila. People are much more comfortable calling you Jessie, calling you, some even say this girl. Now, I think just 2 weeks ago, I had the whole country busy talking about whether I put powder on my face or how I look like, as if what defines me are my looks. We are still meeting issues of people thinking if you're in politics, you're a prostitute. Now, if you say, what are we doing? I think the first thing is to make sure that more women access university education. We are looking into issues of loans, because one thing that's keeping a lot of women, a lot of patriarchy, to end up having more men education is that of finances. So we're really taking seriously. That is why the Chakwera government is not wasting any minute, but making sure that the loans are scaled up.
That's Dr. Jessie Duarte, Kabwila, sorry, oh my goodness, Malawi's Higher Education Minister. And that's our Channel Africa Conversations podcast, which is out today on YouTube. So look out for it.
And it's on the move after Africa Rise and Shine. And today we start on the note of a birthday celebration for Benjamin.
You guys have already sang happy birthday off air, so it's enough.
Is it enough?
It's embarrassing.
Yeah, after about a few years, you get tired of hearing that song. It doesn't matter. Do you still want cake?
No, it's the fourth level now, so I think you kind of get like cake. I've had enough cakes in my life.
I stopped counting after I turned 21. So I've been 21 about 40 times now.
Well, we hope you enjoy your day, and blessings to you. What can we expect on the move today?
Okay, this is something that we're going to be speaking about. Navigating relationships for persons with disabilities. And we're talking romantic relationships, because at times we think persons with disabilities are defined by their disabilities, and we kind of desexualize them and we disassociate them from having the same relationships as abled persons. So we're going to be chatting a little bit about that, and it's going to be a learning curve for us.
Yeah, that's actually quite an interesting thing. And you're right. You know what? We're all human beings first, and we all have the same passions and desires. But as you say, quite often, particularly able-bodied people, without thinking.
And you're talking physically or in all aspects?
I think physically in all aspects, you know, it can also be, especially people with mental disabilities as well. You know, at times we are very kind of no, you can't actually go into that arena with a person with maybe a mental disability. And, you know, I remember one time I was doing an interview, and one of the experts said, because I say disabled persons, it's like, no, it's not a disabled person, it's a person with a disability, you know, and that distinction is such an important one.
Well, we certainly look forward to that.
Yeah, thank you. That's On the Move, coming up on Channel Africa after Rise and Shine. But from me, Asanda, Beda, and Peter Ndoro, it's goodbye for now. We hand you over to the news to get your update with Jolane Tulongwepe. And then Figile Lingwati will follow with sports headlines. And we'll catch up with you tomorrow, 6 till 9. Goodbye.